Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto is Demon Captain of Squad 2. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Shadow Knight Destroyer and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. The Return. Farewell Shijikuni Yamamoto. Where the words uttered as a single slash was all that it took for the head captain's body to become in two. The upper half fell and with it, his Ryatsu had begun to vanish yet, even so the lower half did not fall, but stood standing. Iwich stood there, staring at his once archenemy in disappointment before turning away. Their demise was pitiful. His attention turns to his second in command. Let's go, Hashwolf. His subordinate nods in understanding yet the Quincy found himself being pulled by something and just looks to see the head captain, despite on death's doors, he still gripped the leader's cloak. The rain that fell was washing the blood all around the head captain away. But a single swipe of his sword, the arm of the strongest captain was severed before a boot found its way atop his head. Trying to show that even after death you won't let me go, how utterly meaningless. You probably couldn't understand why you were never among the 5 I was concerned about. Ichigo Kurosaki. Latent ability. Kenpachi Zaraki. Fighting strength. Ichib Haimsub. Wisdom. Samsukeisen. Ryatsu. Kisukirahara. Means. In the end, just like 1000 years ago you have been apprehensive when it comes to the help of humans, even though they could have indeed been of great help, you did not want their help to be at healing your armor fighting against Aizen. In the end, this means of you being the sole pillar that holds up not only Soul Society, but the entire world of the living, was indeed foolish for you to have lost. Their Bankai may have gotten stronger, but in the end, you've gotten weaker. Slowly he raises a hand to shower a glow beginning to form. I have things to do and the past should stay the past, but if you are indeed still alive, I'll leave these parting words with you. The Soul Society will die yet the 13 court guard squads died with us 1000 years in that instant, he heard it just as many others around the Sirte heard it. A loud echo, the sound of banging was heard coming from behind Iwich, who turns his head in the direction of the Squad 1 barracks. It's coming from the Squad 1 barracks. His eyes widen and was on guard, his eyes now narrowing. I see, so Samsukeisen has decided to make his move, how bothersome. He turns back to face Yamamoto and raises his hand to once again create a glow. He was silenced as a loud explosion sounded from behind him. He turns fast, eyes now narrowed at Aizen, already escaping despite the seals he had on his body, yet that's when he noticed one specific thing that didn't make any sense, and that was the fact he couldn't sense Aizen's Riryoku, but in others, yet it suddenly vanished before both his and Hashwolf's eyes widen as someone got past them, gaining their attention to see a lone ragged man having grabbed Yamamoto's upper and lower halves to place them where they should be. From what the two Quincy could see from his back, he wore ragged clothing that had rips and tears all over them, messy and dirty blonde hair that hasn't been washed in a long while, bare feet that have a few scars on them. When I was a kid, the man finally spoke in a somber tone. The first thing I heard about Soul Reapers was their captain, the oldest and strongest of the Gate 13, head captain Yamamoto. From the very few occasions I saw you were ended up taking your class, I could always feel you were always on another level I never hoped to reach. But don't worry, everything will be fine, so you go rest, you earned it, sir. As he spoke, the head captain stared into the ocean blue eyes of the man, not able to speak, but ever slowly he began to relax as his eyes closed, as if all the tenseness has vanished and something which had noticed the fact this man allowed the head captain to rest in peace, as his eyes fully closed and any form of life had vanished from him. As this happened, the man slowly stood over the captain as the rain continued to fall from the sky. They're the one who did this to the old man. The man finally turns, revealing a messy face, a goatee, and hair almost covering his eyes, yet they could be seen as an ocean blue with the pupils being slitted. This gave off the complete opposite of his appearance, the eyes of a man who's come to turn the war around. At this point, Hashwolf got in front of Iwich and pulled out his sword, but was stopped by the leader who placed a hand on his shoulder, surprising the Quincy who watched his majesty step forward. Judging from your appearance, you can be none other than the so-called demon of the 2nd division as I recall. This got no reaction from the man. I know all about what had transpired and the crime you've committed over 100 years ago. At that point, he got a reaction, a sad one at that, which noticed his eyes avoiding his own and smiled. You have stayed locked in Yukon for over 100 years and do not even have yours Zanpakuto, so tell me this, do you honestly believe you could turn this battle? Which stopped as his eyes slowly widened, and it was the fact the moment their eyes met again, he saw they were unwavering strength before they felt it as a vein formed on his forehead. He unleashed his crimson spiritual pressure that took them both by surprise, and it wasn't just them, both the Quincy and the Soul Reapers had felt the sudden spike out of nowhere, yet that wasn't what took them by surprise, it was the sheer size of it, yet despite that and the origin of it, it somehow brought a reassuring feeling to several individuals. One such was Shunsui, who was shot several times, yet despite knowing the passing of his teacher, he had calmed down, which surprised Robert Accutron, who watched the captain turn in the direction of the fight about to begin. In all of the Gate 13, he turns to the Quincy, whose eyes widen as he was now unnerved. There has been only one you could consider as the number one most unpredictable individual out there, and now he's entered the war. This got a reaction from the Quincy, yet he was even more unnerved as he felt it. Back with him, it finally ended. The man took a deep breath and slowly entered a fighting stance, while the father of all Quincy drew his blade, the two staring down the other before a second later they clashed, fist against the side of his sword, with the two struggling against the other, before it which extends his hand fast to grab the man by his throat. It doesn't matter if you're my opponent, in the end, you are but a failure. He stopped when he saw it, a smile, and at that point he looked to see his sword was being held by the blade, and he couldn't even budge it, much to his surprise. I am a failure, but a failure is enough to kick your ass, was all he said as the ground shook, which he looks down to find it erupting with a fist, slamming into Iwich's chin as he started being carried upwards by the force, and he lost his grip on the man, yet he was stopped by a sudden pull. His attention still on the man who was gripping the sword tightly with blood being seen, yet at that point he had realized the issue. He was off the ground and in the air before he found himself upside down. The man had twisted his arm to have Iwich upside down. Why, he couldn't even finish that train of thought, for in that moment the one who had come from the ground had risen from it and threw a punch that found its way right to his face, sending the Quincy flying and skipping across the ground. "Your Majesty," Hashwolf shouted as his lord regained his footing, now skidding on the ground before he came to a stop by using his sword as leverage, digging it into the earth and skidding only a few more feet before he completely stops, looking up to find not one but two men now, looking like complete copies of each other, before the one who had come from the ground turned to smoke, disappearing. This sight just shocked Iwich, for he has never seen such a thing before. The man turns away from them, walking towards Yamamoto's corpse, where he places a hand on it and wipes some of the blood from the freshly made wound. "What are you?" Iwich just stops at seeing the man turn towards him, raising his fist towards the father of all Quincy, his fist dripping with the rainwater, Yamamoto's blood and his own. "I am Naruto and I vow to win." The two Quincy just stare at the man that stood before them with unbreakable determination. Never drop your guard, eyes always on the opponent, never show weakness, and always keep your emotions in check. As those words echoed in his mind, one of his oldest memories began to act up, and with it the beginning of his story. 150 plus years ago in the Rukongai district, the day everything changed. "I believe this is the place where the thefts have been taking place, Captain." Among the crowd of the residents of the Rukongai were two individuals who were watching from the rooftop of a house. They were one Smjun Kichiki and his father Captain Ginrei Kichiki, who were examining the crowds of souls that were walking by, and a few soul reapers who were walking amongst the crowds. The captain was looking across the crowds closely for anyone suspicious, keeping an eye specifically on the soul reapers. "This district is in our jurisdiction. To think that there have been thefts, but on members of the Gate 13 no less." Smjun glances at the older man who seemed to be focused on something a little ways away, and that was when he saw it. The man's eyes widening, which he too looked at where he was focused on to see one soul reaper walking through a crowd before he noticed someone walking in the opposite direction. He was placing a sack in a sack he held. "I believe I found the thief." He turns to his lieutenant. "I will handle this, but I want you to check around in case there are more." This surprised the man, yet, in the end, he did as told, leaving his captain and father by himself, which the man just focuses on the thief, a blonde-haired man who looked to be around 17 to 18 years old by human standards. Ahehe, smiled a younger Naruto who was hiding out in a broken-down house that could be seen as a shed, sitting on a damaged box, while tossing the bag of coins in one hand. "And the number one thief of Rukongai strikes again, the Gate 13, must be a bunch of idiots." It was after he said that, he realized the wallet never came down on his hand again. "So not only have I witnessed a crime, but you even admitted to it." Slowly, ever slowly he starts turning like a robot with a weak smile to find none other than Ginrei Kichiki standing behind him, holding his squad member's wallet. "I found it on the ground." This visible lie had gotten the older man to sigh. Hey, even so his gaze was now on the sweating young man. "Where did you learn that?" That got a look of surprise from the blonde, who tilted his head, now putting on a more confused expression than worried. "You know, I need more information on what you're talking about, Gramps." At that point, Ginrei frowns at the rudeness in the youngster's tone. "That is not how you address someone else, young man." His gaze caused Naruto to swallow. Sorry. At that point, more questions are being thought of by Ginrei, but he asked the simplest one. "That moment you had walked past my subordinate, you almost effortlessly and swiftly had taken his wallet without his notice." That had gotten a look of surprise from him. Something done on that caliber, you must have received teachings from someone. That caused him to put on a look of thought, but he ends up shrugging while looking away. "Don't know, I just could when I tried it for once." This had surprised the captain. Besides, they weren't really hard to pickpocket. As he was told this, Ginrei just stares down at the young man before he spoke again. "What is your name, young man?" This had gotten a surprised look from the blonde who turns his head back to the captain. Naruto. His response got another question that followed it up. "What of your last name?" This got an expression of wonder, but he shrugs. "Don't know, I've always been by myself." As that was spoken, the captain stares down at Naruto who was staring up at him but started to look uncomfortable at his stare until he finally spoke. "But the skill you possess, you can accomplish great things." This had caused the young man's eyes to widen. "And with time and patience, you can master that talent you were born with to use it in more productive ways." At this point, Naruto stood up to look at the old captain in surprise. "What are you saying exactly?" "I'm asking if the idea of becoming a member of the Gate 13 interests you and in turn becoming a Soul Reaper rather than wasting your life by robbing others." As he asked him that, Naruto stares at him with wide eyes and watched the man turn around. "If you are interested, then apply to the academy. In 1 month they will be holding another entrance exam and I recommend you attend it." As he started to leave, he was stopped by the young man. "What's your name, old sir?" As he asked that, the old man turns to look at Naruto once again, seeing a new look in his eyes. "My name is Ginrei Kichiki, captain of the 6th division and 27th head of the Kichiki clan." At this point, his eyes were now wide. "Be warned, with the returning of this wallet I will look past your actions, yet continuing down this path will end only in disciplinary action. Whether or not you choose to continue living in Rukongai or attend." He was abruptly cut off. "I'll do it." This got a look of surprise. "I'll attend the academy in a month." As he said that, he showed an expression as if wanting to hear more positive things about himself. The captain just stares at him before turning away. "If that is your decision, then prepare yourself both physically and mentally, for your life will change the moment you attend." He nods quickly and spoke. "Will we meet again, Captain?" He said it, not sure how to address him, but he spoke from hearing the tone in his voice. "We will meet again, and when we do, you may address me as Captain Kichiki." With that said, he leaves the young man by himself as he just stood there. "But the skill you possess, you can accomplish great things." As he recalled his words, a newfound determination appeared in his eyes. "That was the day I decided to become a Soul Reaper and the day that began my journey." Chapter 2. The beginning of the academy. 1 month later, at Shin Academy. "You barely passed, your scores were horrendous, but even so, you managed to pass your physical test." As he recalled those words, the blonde was staring up at the large entrance sign for the Shinigami Academy. Students walking by were wearing the same uniform he had to wear with packs around their shoulders. Unlike Naruto, who had none, yet his attention was drawn towards 2 fellow students, muttering to themselves while looking at him, but the moment he looked at them they just hurried through the gate. "They had the same eyes," muttered the blonde, who takes a deep breath before entering the gate as well. The gate to Shin Academy, where he saw a massive open area where students stood all around on the blue marble that spreads through the academy. Naruto just looks around to see students conversing with each other, talking amongst themselves, yet now and again, he could see some were looking at him. The only one who stood out, yet that all ends when a loud sound echoed through the area, causing him to turn towards the gate, where it was shut before once again a sound before him was made, causing him to turn to see the large doors of the building opening. He stops to see fellow students walking towards the door, signaling him to do the same as he heads towards the door as well, and it led him to a large lecture hall with the seats being in rows. Seeing this, he saw students sitting down one after another, and he too did the same, yet as he did so he got glances from those that sat next to him on either side. "Just say it, why don't you?" thought the blonde, who was already getting annoyed by the stares until theirs was drawn away by a man speaking to them all at the front, standing at a podium with a scroll laid out before him. "Welcome, new students, to Shin Academy. You are now part of a proud tradition, a unique school dedicated to building the stealth forces in the Gate 13 of the future. Apply yourselves diligently to your studies and uphold the honor of our school." He proceeds to lift a piece of paper, the same one they were given upon completion of the entrance exam they all had to bring in. "Each of you has a piece of paper given upon the completion of your exam. They will hold your homeroom number, and from there, your instructor will hand each of you a list of classes you'll be taking for the 6 years. You will head there after I adjourn this assembly. My name is Gen Sharmaka Kiba. I am the 3rd seed of the 1st division. I have stepped away from my post for the next 6 years to be assigned as head of this academy in order to help nurture the next generation." At this point he got a lot of surprised looks from the students, one being from Naruto, yet disappointed he wasn't in the squad of the man he wants to meet again. Now adjourned. With that said, he turns away from everyone to walk towards the door, while others start getting up to leave, just like Naruto, who looked both ways to see his fellow classmates heading to their classes before he felt something teaspoons against his shoe and looks down at seeing a folded piece of paper against his foot, which he bends down and picks it up. "No, where is it?" As he heard a feminine voice, his gaze turns to see silver hair sticking up behind him, showing someone was searching for something, and Naruto looks at the piece of paper, opening it a little, his eyes widen a little. "Is your name Isain Katetsu?" As he said that, the person stops before looking up to reveal a woman with gray eyes and short messy silver hair. Why yes, she looked slightly shy, yet her gaze was observing him before she saw him raise the paper much to her surprise, and immediately stands up. "You found it." As she said that, she showed a grateful smile while Naruto was looking at her, eyes slightly wide due to the simple fact she was tall, standing above him, and such a sight didn't go unnoticed as Isane started looking depressed. "My height unnerves you, doesn't it?" This immediately got a response as the blonde raises his hands. And no, it really doesn't at all. He stops and realizes he was still holding her paper before handing it back. "That's what they all say, but it's written all over your face." She was cut off by seeing a hand and looks up to see the uncomfortable Naruto raising a hand. I'm Naruto. I noticed on your paper we were assigned to the same class." All this did was gain a sigh as she turns around. "Don't worry, you don't have to force yourself, I've gotten used to it." Her expression turns somber. "See you in class." With that said, she starts walking away with Naruto standing there and sweating. Despite the fact the blonde was making an effort to make a friend, it was immediately taken the wrong way, which left the blonde now reflecting on what he did wrong before he was startled by a slap on his back and the words "Don't let it get to ya," causing him to turn towards one raven-haired student who had a similar hairstyle to his own, also being spiky. "She's always been like that when it comes to her height, so don't think too hard about it." He proceeds to smile and extends a hand. "I'm Kane Shiba." With a smile on his face that reassured those who saw it, Naruto extends a hand and shook his. "I would chat more, but we need to get to our homerooms to receive the list of classes from our instructors." He gives a wave. "Later, Naruto." With that said, he walks off with Naruto, realizing he never gave his name, but wondering if he overheard him talking to Isane, while Kane was smiling as he was heading to his class. So he's the one talked about so much. The Shiba clan member just smiles while Naruto walks in the other direction out of the lecture hall towards his class, and upon arriving, he's greeted by a class almost filled save for a seat in the far back which he took and in turn, gaining the attention of everyone as the last to enter. One Isane noticed him, but avoided his gaze at the end which he took notice of as he sat while the mentor was eyeing Naruto. The man had his face concealed by cloth. "Let me introduce myself, I am Chiriku FNG. Surprised looks formed on many students' faces, except for the blonde who was disinterested. "For the remainder of the year, I will be your mentor for this class and your remainder of the time at the academy." His gaze was piercing as he looked over the class, causing a few students to shrivel under his intense gaze. "Before I hand each of you your classes, I must inform you that among all the freshmen, you all have the lowest scores from the entrance exams, whether it be one or more." This got a round of whispers and groans, one being Isane who sighs and another girl who appeared to be mopping. "But do not fret, you have all the chances of excelling in what you lack as you learn at this academy." But that he proceeds to walk around the class, handing each of them a piece of paper which they take and open to show their classes for the next 6 years, and as he did so he spoke. "For the next 6 years, the curriculum will be how to control and use your Ryoryoku, as well as the 4 major principles of combat, Hakuta, Home, Kidm, and Zanjutsu." As he was explaining, Naruto started losing track of what he was talking about and the stuff he was talking about. "Before the day is done, you will obtain Zanpakuto." This got his attention as he glances at the mentor. "Upon entering this academy, you will be loaned one of our nameless Zanpakuto, and that same blade will officially be given to you upon passing the academy and joining one of the 13 divisions. You will be taught how to communicate with the spirit of your Zanpakuto." He stops to see Naruto raising a hand, gaining the attention of others. "What's a Zanpakuto?" This question immediately got some snickers and mutters from some of the students which Naruto just ignored and did not strike them, while the teacher merely sighs. The Zanpakuto is the weapon all Shinigamis use. It is capable of cutting the spiritual bodies, which is the main form to combat hollows. This caused his eyes to widen a little. A Zanpakuto also is not any sort of weapon that can simply be obtained and used. The sword will become a reflection of a soul reaper's power and soul, and become sentient. All Zanpakuto gain a name for the living spirit which empowers the sword and lends its strength to the Shinigami who wields it. In your inner world, you can see such beings, and they can vary greatly in appearance and have their very own distinct personalities, which are similar to their owners. He stops to see Naruto becoming more lost at the fact they get living swords, which the mentor sighs and gains more chuckles. "Naruto, could you stay after class?" This got wide eyes than an audible groan from the blonde, while students started to chuckle and talk amongst themselves. District 9 trash. Why do they even allow them in here? How did he even pass? Anyone who takes the test needs to know the literal basics. As he heard those things, Naruto remained emotionless, yet his hand was turning into a fist. A few were looking at him sympathetically. In the end, the class continued with the introductions of what they will be warned, yet as it went on and on, the lone blonde sat in silence, due to not knowing anything about Hakuta, Home, Kidm, and Zanjutsu as well as Ryatsu. "That's enough for today. I will say spend the rest of the day finding your classes and getting used to your surroundings." As he spoke the students began standing up. Remember, at the end of today you all will be issued your own Zanpakuto, so prepare yourselves. As he said it, the only one still sitting was Naruto, who received a come here wave of a hand which he stood up while the man looks at one particular student, a petite girl with pale skin and short black hair that had a strand of hair that fell across her face. Is Inuyasuri. This caused the girl to stop and turn while the others in front of her glanced back yet didn't bother waiting or seeing what it was about. Could you stay behind, I also wish to speak to you. This caused her eyes to widen but walk towards the mentor with Naruto doing the same and he glances at the short girl who stood at his side. As you two are fully aware, among all the applicants here you both barely passed the entrance exams. This got a response as the girl looked unsure of herself while the blonde looked annoyed while the mentor looked over some papers before him. You two should know that not even a year ago, the tests were altered and are still being altered as we speak to give those from the Rukongai a better chance at passing. This had taken them by surprise. Very few are in this very academy, you two are the only ones who managed to pass and enter this academy, the only freshmen this year that came from outside of the Sirte. I won't lie and say it will be easy, it will be more difficult for you because of those reasons, you may suffer from mistreatment from your peers. He stopped seeing the look she made, well the blonde looked like he could hardly care though it was obvious he was bothered. Or already have, but in the end don't let them discourage you too, prove them wrong, and become splendid soul reaper. This had surprised the two of them, not expecting to hear such a thing, despite his fierce gaze his words were all but reassuring. From your entrance exam tests, I can see you two would improve greatly by learning from each other, you both lack what the other doesn't. As he said that the two looked at the other. Just keep what I said in mind, you may go now. As he told them that, he sat back at his desk while the two made their way out of the room and the teacher just watched them leave before he looked down at a particular paper. I can see why I was assigned to this class. He got a 0 due to having left the written exam completely blank, yet he looks past the paper down on the second paper, a frown once again forms on his face at the sight of the test. Even at the start of this academy, not one student has ever gotten this high of a score for the physical part of the exam, even comparing it to Ms. Lady Uruchi when she took the clan test at his age, it's still slightly higher. He looks back where Naruto has left. I can only wonder what he will be capable of by the time he leaves the academy. As he thought that, at the same time Naruto was walking next to Ms. Inuyasuri, the two were rather silent as they appeared in thought, yet simultaneously they had spoken. The two stopped walking as they appeared surprised, they stared at each other before suddenly smiling and laughing a little, the nervousness and awkwardness suddenly started to vanish between them as the taller of the two extended a hand. My name's Naruto, no last name and I'm from District 9. He hit looks from those walking by, but like Naruto, she also ignores the lose and she shook it while giving him a gentle smile. I'm Inuyasuri, Hasana Inuyasuri and I'm from District 78. With that single introduction, a new friendship had formed as both had made their first friends since coming to the academy. Chapter 3. Last chapter, Naruto was walking next to Ms. Inuyasuri, the two were rather silent as they appeared in thought yet simultaneously they had spoken. The two stopped walking as they appeared surprised, they stared at each other before suddenly smiling and laughing a little, the nervousness and awkwardness suddenly started to vanish between them as the taller of the two extended a hand. My name's Naruto, no last name and I'm from District 9. He hit looks from those walking by, but like Naruto, she also ignores the lose and she shook it while giving him a gentle smile. I'm Inuyasuri, Hasana Inuyasuri and I'm from District 78. With that single introduction, a new friendship had formed as both had made their first friends since coming to the academy. Current chapter 1 year later one day in the spring, during 1 hour of free period, and there spoke a smiling Hasana, sitting outside the academy building within the garden located at the center for studying purposes. The Inuyasuri had a brush in hand and was practicing her calligraphy. It was a bright and sunny day, but Hasana sat in the shade, under a sakura tree that was in full bloom. As she stares at it, slowly the smile disappears and in its place was regret. I wonder if you're okay. As she muttered that, she started to look even more depressed as tears form in her eyes. Ah, Hasana. This got a jolt from the girl who almost drops her brush, but she quickly grips it and wipes her face a little with her sleeve, turning with a smile to see a smiling Kane Shiba approaching her, but she frowns upon seeing her face yet stops when he saw her weak smile as if reassuring him. Oh, hey Kane. She puts down her brush and gave a wave to the young man who responds as he returned the smile, his gaze looking in all directions. So where's Whiskers at? This got a small almost snort from Hasana at Naruto's nickname. He's usually hanging around you, sleeping when you're doing calligraphy or lazing around when you try helping him study. She merely shrugs while lifting both her hands. You know him, he's probably doing the usual. This got him to chuckle as he looks away smiling as he spoke. After he discovered what raiment was he was pretty inseparable from it, more so the fact the bill he racked up. Laughter was gained from Hasana, recalling that memory quite well as Kane was crying at the bill he had to pay, yet the laughter starts to die down, Hasana thinking about the expression and words. I don't know why, but eating this makes me so happy yet so sad. As she recalled those words, a frown forms on her face yet pushes that aside. I heard you're graduating, this caught him by surprise. Rumor is you're a prodigy who in a mere 2 years has completed the curriculum of the Shin Academy. Hasana looks at him with a sad smile, while the man just looks away with a weak smile. Naruto was shocked, to say the least when he heard. I tried to tell him it was a rumor, but he didn't believe it. Her words caused him to frown once again. What did you expect, mutters Kane. We're his first friend so of course he would act like that, he doesn't try making more friends, just us. Either way, once he graduates we'll be able to see each other and hang out again. Though might be a lot sooner when it comes to him. He mutters the last part with Hasana looking at him questionably, not hearing him fully, yet he just smiled and waved his hands. I'll talk to him later, so how goes the teaching? This got her to sigh. Unlike Hakuta, he's having lots of issues with Kidm. So far, any time he's tried using Kidm, whether it is Bakidm, Hadm and Kadm, it just self-destructs. This got a look of surprise on his face. I know he's having problems but exploding. Isn't he doing the incantations first? She nods and places a hand on her chin. He is but I don't know what the problem he's having is, he's doing everything right but the moment he chants, it ends badly. This got the genius to look away with wonder. So how goes his Zanjutsu Tra? Take that back. That sudden shout got their attention, coming from outside the garden, leaving the two to make their way towards the entrance of the garden to find a small crowd gathered, and in the center was Jerome Mikanzaka, a large man who was a fourth year. The man was being grabbed by a certain blonde tightly, glaring at the taller and larger one who didn't seem bothered, more so he was visibly yawning. This isn't a joke, take it back Mikanzaka. He once again demanded yet he just looked at Naruto with great annoyance before turning and raising a hand. Can't hear you from down there District 9 trash. This seemed to anger the blonde more at the one who just smirks which Naruto starts to raise a fist when Kane gets between them, a hand on Naruto's raised fist and another stopping his hand gripping Germ's kimono, which has him letting it go. That's enough you two, no need to start anything less, we anger our superiors Naruto just points at Germ again. Not until he apologizes. This caused Kane to raise an eyebrow and look at Germ who merely turns away and scoffed. All I said is that Inuzuri girl isn't cut out for being a Shinigami. This caused Kane's eyes to narrow a little, while Naruto was gritting his teeth, with the crowd watching before their attention turns to someone approaching the scene, said person stops behind Naruto, placing a hand on his shoulder which he turned to find Hasana there, giving him a smile that causes the blonde to breathe out and turns away from Germ. Let's get going, I got better things to do than argue with you Ikanzaka. Mutters the blonde as he starts walking away with Hasana following with Kane doing the same as he pats Germ on the back. That was a close one, almost ended quite badly. This got the man a smirk as he crosses his arms. Of course, it wouldn't look good if I were too he stops mid-sentence when he shook his head, turning away from him as he started following after the two of them while the other students were leaving the scene. That's not what I meant. Was all he said, confusing the Shinigami in training who watched the three retreat, leaving him frowning, while Kane and Hasana stood on either side of the annoyed blonde. That was a close one, you would have gotten in trouble with Shuriku FNG. Hasana said, giving him an all-knowing smile that just makes him look depressed at not being able to do anything. She's right you know, Kane raises a hand while the three made their way back into the garden where Hasana's supplies were at. If you had punched an upperclassman, you would be on the receiving end a lot more than just disciplinary action. This just got him to grumble in annoyance, but in the end, he sighs while Hasana picks up her supplies. It's just a punch, they should be the ones getting disciplined if a lower classman beat them. This merely got Kane to cross his arms. Wouldn't that just make them want to harass you more if you beat them? Questioned Hasana who had gathered her supplies in hand and turned to Naruto who just looks away with annoyance before turning his gaze over towards Kane. So, heard you're graduating early this sudden question got his eyes to widen. You're turning it down, right? This question just got his eyes to widen a little before they soften, staring into the eyes of his friend. Naruto, I was all he could say as the eye contact was broken by Naruto who suddenly turns, surprising the two of them, while his arms were behind his head. No need to explain, go for it. This took him and Hasana by surprise, seeing Naruto's expression wasn't happy or sad, but neutral. You're graduating early which is a big accomplishment after all, so you should take it without a second thought. As he heard that, Kane smiles just like Hasana. Pretty uncharacteristic of you he stops when he saw Naruto start to smile evilly. Since you'll be graduating early, you'll be making a salary so once you graduate, Raymond's on you for the years you missed. Kane's eyes almost bugged out. With your appetite, are you out of your damn mind? I'll take that as a yes. You're a bottomless pit. You'll dry my family fortune. I need sustenance to grow. As they went back and forth, Hasana just smiles at the two yet slowly it turns sad. Rukia would have gotten along with them, slowly she looks down. If only I hadn't abandoned, I would be able to see how her thoughts were silenced as a flick to her forehead happened, causing her to look up as she found the two staring at her, Naruto having flicked her before standing up straight next to Kane. You okay Hasana, you looking pretty down like you wanna cry. This got an elbow from Kane, the two making eye contact with odd gestures happening, which Hasana just smiles at the duo communicating with Kane punching Naruto on the head, leaving the blonde crouching as he held his head. Ignore the idiot, you've been looking down lately, anything wrong? As soon as he asked that, he found himself in a headlock with the blonde, giving him a vicious noogie with the soon graduate trying to desperately free himself to no avail. Yeah, whenever we see you after being alone it happens. His words caused her eyes to widen before she looks down at her feet. She was cut off as a hand rests atop her head, causing her to look up and meet Naruto's smile, and he shoves his thumb into his chest. Don't need to say anything till you're ready, just remember we're always here to help. Hasana's eyes widen at hearing those words, while Kane breaks free, scratching his head and giving Naruto a side glare, while the blonde just gave him a smug-ass smile, before turning his attention to Hasana. Whiskers right, this caused the blonde's eye to twitch. Just ask and we'll help you as best we can, after all, we're friends. Their words had caused her to look at her feet, slowly tears start to form that caused the two to go wide-eyed and look at each other like they just screwed up. Thanks guys. As she looked up, her tearful eyes were met with the scene of the two idiots in the middle of fighting, Kane pulling Naruto's hair, while Naruto was busy pulling Kane's cheek, both trying to push the other away, but had stopped when Hasana noticed them, yet she just laughs, which causes the two to look at each other, before they laugh along with her. So, Kane began. How about you two come to my place after classes? This got the two to look at him with surprise. Their place, Hasana appeared unsure of the idea. Are you sure we're allowed, we're not noble? This merely got a shake of the head from Kane. It's fine, you're my guests and friends. We've been hanging for over a year, ever since Naruto swung his sword in class, while forgetting the scabbard was still on. This started to make Naruto sweat. Which hit me in the forehead. You're not gonna let that go, are you? Which reminds me, Kane gave Naruto a deathly glare. How goes your Zanjutsu classes? The all lost the grip of his sword mid-swing spike Hasana, looking away uncomfortably while Kane's eye twitches. Ahaha, at least it didn't hit anyone this time. Naruto you idiot, what was the point of the late night lessons I gave you? It slipped okay, he crosses his arms in annoyance. Not my fault that stupid Bakken is breakable, I hold it too light it slips, but if I hold it too tight I end up crushing the thing, it's annoying to adjust. He mutters the last part with Kane appearing to calm down. Even now, as Kane thought that, Naruto's back turned towards them with Hasana as well. His strength is just shocking, if I hadn't interfered in all those fights he would have sent them all to the infirmary with just a single punch. He stared at Naruto's back, knowing for a clear fact from day one he heard about Naruto's abilities. It was with these thoughts, he started to smile at the future Naruto had as a Shinigami. This is the place. Mutters the blonde as he stood next to Hasana at the gates of a large manor, the two seeing large houses inside the gate from just up close to the front. Slowly, Hasana raises a hand and knocks yet almost immediately from behind the gate jumps out to men, causing the two to step back upon the sight of two large and bald men, both wearing a red hat, one having yellow clothing and the other gray. Alt strangers, one spoke as they crossed their arms. I Shirigana Hiko. As he began the other spoke. And I Kagana Hiko. They stepped forward. Cannot allow you entrance. Both entered a fighting stance with Hasana taking a step back, unsure before Naruto got in front of her, surprising her. Beggin. Or advance and be killed now for your insolence. As he said that, the two stood before them with intimidating expressions, yet Naruto appeared unbothered. Okay, but Kane invited us. This caused their eyes to widen. I'm Naruto and this is Hasana. He stops to see they were now sweating like ghosts. Is everything he was silenced at seeing the two suddenly bow. We're sorry, they shout simultaneously. Please forgive us for our foolishness. As they shouted that, the two were now looking unnerved before they heard footsteps and look at the gate opening. The hell is going on? Demanded someone with a softer tone yet stern. I can hear shouting from my room. Stepping out was a youthful looking woman, appearing around the age of Naruto. She looked like she had just woken up due to her long messy black hair despite her clothing, the red kimono she wore being neat. The three stare at each other for a few seconds, more so Naruto and her, green eyes meeting blue, and she just takes in Naruto's appearance, and the fact his casual wear was an odd choice for it was. The Kokogi, taking the form of a sleeveless top with matching baggy pants, and a short-sleeved orange undershirt, along with black sandals, and an orange obi tied in a knot over the waist. Their outfit looks like shit. All she got in response was an eye twitch, resulting in the next few minutes of nonsense happening until Kane arrives at the front, given quite the sight of the guards watching in despair next to Hasana, who was facepalming. What was happening had gathered a small crowd, some actual low nobles whispering amongst themselves, and it was the sight of the woman arguing with the blonde. "Cut your hair, you look like you can't afford a decent barber. At least I don't look like I got run over by the kotatsu. Orange is a shit color. Oh you bit, Naruto. Chikaku." The two jolt. Enough already. As they turn, they see the Kane standing at the door before he mimics Hasana and face palms, the sight causing the two to finally take in the crowd and start to sweat. Chapter 4. There was all but silence as an annoyed Naruto sat next to the apologetic-looking Hasana, while before them sat the tired Kane and the annoyed Kaku, while outside sat one of the guards, shaking in fear. Now, Kane forces a weak tired smile. "Can we have a nice peaceful chat?" As he asked that, almost immediately Kaku and Naruto looked away with great annoyance, gaining a sigh from himself and Hasana. "Naruto." Hasana began, giving her friend a look that said it all, yet the blonde just tch in response, causing her to sigh again. "Kaku, as a noble of the Shiba clan, you have an obliga." He stops to see she was looking disinterested while picking her ear with her pinky. "Don't wanna." This all but caused a tick mark to form on his forehead, yet in the end he too sighs once again before looking at the two. "I'll start, as you now know this is my younger sister, Kaku Shiba." He was cut off by his sister, abruptly grabbing him by the collar. "Hey, who the hell told you can just give my name away? They are our guests, Kaku." "Like hell they are." As they argued, the two guests just watched in silence, yet as the seconds went by, Naruto looked uncomfortable as Hasana was staring at him with a single look, her eyes telling all, and that was be nice, which he in the end sighs after not being able to handle the stare. Naruto. As he said that, the two stopped arguing and looked at Naruto, who looked embarrassed. Just Naruto. Which caused Kaku to snort. Like the ramen topping. Slap. Ow. Kaku turns to glare at her brother for slapping her upside the head. The hell was that for? You know why? With that said, lighting sparks between the two of them, while Naruto and Hasana stare at the sibling squabble. "I get the feeling this happens a lot." "No kidding, I've rarely seen Kane get violent, he usually stops it." The two were whispering to each other before they sat up straight when the siblings looked at them simultaneously. "Violet, huh?" The Shiba's eye twitched and Naruto just laughs awkwardly and scratches the back of his head. I'm joking. Yeah. With that response, he sighs to himself before looking at the two of them. "So how was the walk here with the pass I gave you?" This caused both Naruto and Hasana's eyes to widen. "I know your two aren't soul reapers, let alone from Rukongai, so even with a pass you were bound to have some issues, but how was crossing into the noble district from the gate?" This got the two to look at each other, with Naruto just looking away in annoyance. "We were asked several times why we were in the noble district," began Hasana, with the two looking at her. "Though we just showed them the pass belonging to the Shiba family, they still asked questions, but one noble gave us problems, yet he acted very odd." This caused Kane to tilt his head a little. "Odd?" "Yes, despite a polite demeanor he seemed off." Hasana looks at Naruto, who looked very annoyed. "Just being around the guy just pissed me off for some reason, I just wanted to punch him." This caused Kane to stare at Naruto at the lunacy of his words. "Naruto, you can't just assault a noble. You should." He stopped mid-sentence, with Kaku looking a little surprised when they saw his serious expression. It felt like he had some evil intention towards Hasana the moment she gave her name, so I got between them and had a stare down with the guy before giving my own, then he up and left. This had indeed confused Kane. His name was Toki something. At that point, both Kane and Kaku's eyes widened, with the coming graduate putting in a serious expression. Was his name Takanada Tsuneshiro? This surprised the two, with Hasana finally speaking. "Yes, do you perhaps know him?" The noble merely crossed his arms while his sister looked very annoyed. "He's from the Tsuneshiro clan, one of the 5 great noble houses." Kane just shakes his head. "But he didn't try anything, right?" Kane looks at Hasana and then at Naruto, who shook his head. "As I said, it felt like he had some dark intentions toward Hasana, so I got between them. He asked me for my name, and the moment I gave him it he left, though that expression he had was odd." The last part made both nobles appear unnerved. "Like what?" Just like he saw a ghost or something, before having that annoying smile appear on his face before he left. As soon as he finished it, both siblings looked at each other with the same serious expression until Kane sighs. "Since nothing happened, there's nothing to look into, so let's just forget about this," but he and Naruto made eye contact. "Just try to avoid him if you ever see him again, he's always been considered an issue even among nobles." With that said, Kaku spoke with her arms crossed. "Well, Whiskers," began the noble, showing a smile. "You seem to have a tendency to just cause problems with nobles. And you have a tendency of being a bitch." And just like that, Hasana and Kane facepalm as Kaku pulls but her sleeve, standing up with a tick mark just as Naruto did the same, their foreheads colliding with each other. "You wanna go ramen topping?" Bring it on, you crazy banshee. They were silenced by Hisana and Kane, the two working together by punching the two of them in the back of the head, quite hard in fact. Ow ow. The two now knelt as they rubbed their heads in pain, both Hisana and Kane, just staring down at the two with their arms crossed. It was at this moment that Kane realized something. Hey Kaku, where's Ganju? The hell should I know? She glared at her brother while rubbing her head along with Naruto. The Dumbus is probably bore riding or something. It was then at that point mid-conversation that the door slid open, gaining everyone's attention to see a new arrival, a kid who appeared to look surprised at the two arrivals. Ah, Ganju, there you are. Kane smiles at the kid, turning his attention to them. This is our youngest sibling. The kid, Ganju, smiles brightly at seeing the two, knowing exactly who they are while Naruto stared at him, for he appeared quite familiar. Allow me to introduce myself. He shows a big smile. My name is Ganju, the self-proclaimed deep red bullet of West Rukin. This got an immediate facepalm from Kane, a sigh from Kaku, a weak smile and laugh from Hisana, and a starry-eyed look from Naruto, who immediately stood up. Wait, you're Ganju, he shouted with eyes filled with happiness, something that took all three by unnerving surprise, yet Ganju just smiles at the response, his brother's friend knowing him. Ah, a fan I see. So you know of my exploits. He shows a big grin with Kaku just feeling embarrassed at this whole thing, along with Kane at their little brother's antics. Of course, I do, you're the money boy. This cut off his smile with a look filled with confusion. I gotta say, thanks. Your wallet got me through some hard times. This got everyone staring at Naruto, registering the crime he just admitted, yet none were as affected by it as Ganju, whose eyes widen in shock, pointing in rage at the blonde. You're the demon thief of Rukongai. At that point, Hisana and Kane's eyes widen in realization as something started to make sense, yet Kane felt more dread at realizing something. I will not deny nor confirm that. I want my money back. At that point, he was now grabbing Naruto's clothes and pulling on him non-stop, as if trying to shake the money out of him like a pinata before he lets go and turns to his siblings, pointing at the man. This is the asshole who's robbed me dry every time I went to District 9 for business. This bit of information caused everyone to stare at Naruto with mixed emotions. Not my fault, you flaunt your money around too much. This got the kid to turn, glaring daggers at the blonde whose arms were behind his head, looking away without a care. So you admit it? Meh. Don't meh me, I am a proud member of that. At this point, Kaku had a tick mark form on her forehead, glaring daggers at her brother who was silenced in fear before Kaku turns to look at her older brother who was sweating. Wait, does that mean he's the one that's been robbing members of the Gate 13? It seems so. You do know this makes you guilty of association, right? Yes, his shoulders slump with the need to drink sake coming to mind, which Kaku couldn't help but smirk at her brother, just finding out one of his closest friends from the academy turned out to be the demon thief, the terror of nobles. Though, soon enough more despair claimed Kane's heart. Oh my god, mutters Kane in realization, bringing his hands to his face. I think you pickpocketed me before. At that point, Naruto put on a thinking pose. Maybe. Slowly, ever slowly his eye has begun to twitch as he started to raise his sword, slowly unsheathing it, until a small fit of contained laughter was heard, causing the oldest to turn to his sister who was looking away, looking like she was trying hard to not laugh at her family's misfortune, causing him to look annoyed at her. Why are you laughing? He's probably robbed you as well. This caused her to stop and look like she was thinking until Naruto cut in. What do you take me for, a savage? Kane and Ganju look at Naruto, taken aback by that comment. I don't rob women or children. At that point, Ganju just points at Naruto again. You robbed me. I know, but you were so annoying when you flaunted that money around I couldn't help it. At that point, he once again was shaking Naruto like his money will just fall out of his pocket. While this was happening, Hisana was trying to muster a smile but failing, recalling many stories from their classmates that were nobles and how they got robbed, whether in District 9 or near it. My first friend turned out to be a criminal. At that point, they heard knocking that got their attention, and the door slides open to reveal Kaganehiko. Sir Kane. You have a guest at the front door that wishes to speak to you. It is a Shinigami. This got a look of surprise from the noble who in the end stands up. I'll be right back, and you too. He looks at Naruto and Kaku. No fighting. Don't count on it. Believe it. Why do I even try? But that said, he leaves the room in order to make his way to the front door, where Shiraganehiko stood and proceeded to open the door to find a single Shinigami with a kind smile on his face. On his shoulder was the lieutenant badge. He was in the middle of fixing his glasses just as the door opened and proceeded to raise a folder towards Kane, who took it. I was asked by my captain to give this to you. It involves recent hollow attacks taking place in your clan's territory in the Rukongai. After he said that, his eyes slowly widened while Kane opens the folder to look over the documents. I let my uncle know about this. Last I recall he was looking into the matter. He was cut off by a sudden gust of wind hitting the back of his neck, causing him to jolt and turn, showing a pissed expression. Damn it, Naruto. Ahahaha, got you again. The lieutenant just watched as the blonde wrapped an arm around Kane's neck. "I thought you said you wouldn't get caught off guard by me when I snuck behind you." In response, Kane wraps an arm around his neck more tightly as he tries to get him in a chokehold. "This is important business, you damn thief. Of course, I would be distracted." Beeit. As they continued, the lieutenant just stood there before Naruto looked at the man. "So who's four eyes?" That comment just got the man to stare at Naruto, his smile unwavering, yet his gaze narrowed only slightly, just as Kane hit him in the head, gaining an ow while being told not to be rude. "I am Samsuke-san," he introduced, staring at the blonde with now puzzled expression. "I am the lieutenant of the 5th Division. I came to report to Kane Shiba since it was reported he was home for the day." The man could see the blonde's face change as he appeared more calm. "I recall hearing talk amongst a few nobles as I walked here. I heard there was a confrontation with a noble." This caused Naruto to start sweating while Kane sighed. "It's nothing, just an argument." He looks at Naruto. "Go on, introduce yourself already." This got a surprised look on his friend's face before he immediately spoke. "I'm Naruto." That single name only slightly caused Aizen's eyes to widen. "I see." He turned his gaze back to Kane and gave a bow. "I shall take my leave now. Give mine and my captain's regards to your uncle when you see him." With that said, he turned away and starts to walk away, but as he did so his mind was on something else. "From what I heard, he had the highest test scores for the physical part of the testing and snuck up on Kane Shiba, an early coming graduate." With that, Kane starts to head back to the room while Naruto was staring at the back of Aizen, frowning, which the man took notice of while the guard stared at Naruto, wanting to shut the door once he returns. "Is something the matter?" This merely got a shrug from Naruto, who turns away, arms behind his head. "He reminded me of that noble me and Hisana met." This caused Kane's eyes to widen as he watched Naruto walk past him with the door closing behind him. "You sure he's a well-liked member of his division?" This got Naruto to look back at him, an expression that says it all. "Was I ever wrong when it came to finding people I don't like?" But that stated, they returned to the room. "Thanks again." Naruto gave a wave as he was walking away, next to Hisana, who did the same. It was now night. "It was fun, let's do it again when you have a chance." As he said that, he was watching Kane, Kaku and Ganju standing at the entrance with their guards, the kids just sticking their tongues out at Naruto. "So what do you think of him?" Kane glances at his sister, who was a little surprised, yet she scoffs. "He's a dumbass. Why are you asking me that?" She looks at her brother, who suddenly grew a shit-eating grin. "'Cause today was the first day I ever seen someone else get you to laugh." This caused her eyes to widen and looks away with embarrassment, something that shocked the guards and her brother. "Oh, you embarrassed Kaku." What he said next caused her to blush before immediate anger. "Want me to try and convince Naruto to take you out on a date?" He was silenced by her grabbing him by the clothes and raising a fist to his face. "Older brother or not, I will bury you and plant a dumbass tree." Noted. "Tell me it's not true." Ganju gained their attention. "You won't try and marry that thief, right?" With that said, Kaku was raising a fist, looking even more pissed. "The fuck you just say?" In an instant, the kid ran in fear. The guards cowardly before she proceeds to sigh to herself, while her brother just smiled. "I swear if you so much as say something like that again." "I was kidding. I rather not deal with you two trying to kill each other every time you come into contact." It was after saying that Kaku turns to look at the back of Naruto's head while he was chatting with Hisana. "He was able to pickpocket fully fledged Soul Reapers without them even noticing," muttered Kaku, who caused her brother's eyes to widen before he looks away. "He failed the written exam when he entered the academy." This caused her eyes to widen and looks at her brother to see a smile form on his face. Yet when it came to his physical test, he not only aced it, he broke the previous record. At that point, Kaku just stared at him in shock before her. "Does Yoruichi know about him?" "Not sure." He scratches the back of his head. "But seeing that the teacher is paying special attention to him, she may have. From the looks, he has a future in the 2nd division." After he said that, he glances at Kaku. "You still having that feeling?" "You mean the fact it feels like I'm being watched?" She puts a hand on her shoulder, looking around outside before turning away. "Yeah, I'm getting that right now and it's pissing me off." After saying that, Kane just looked back outside, his gaze scanning the area before he turns his head and froze. Before him stood someone in all black, Ganju, and the two guards were on the ground, unmoving yet with no blood. Yet Kaku, however. "Kaku!" It was that shout that had caused Naruto and Hisana to turn back, having heard it just before a small explosion happened, something that caused their eyes to widen, along with nearby guards having seen it, and they converge on the location. Guards using flash step, with Naruto and Hisana being the last to arrive on foot, yet were prevented from entering the estate, as two guards were in front of them, while others passed them in a hurry, along with what looked like medical guards. "You two stay here, you will be questioned." he said while raising his staff along with another, leaving Hisana quite shocked at what happened while Naruto just stood there, wide-eyed past the guards to see guards helping Kain up, who was covered in debris with wounds on his body. The others, who were unconscious yet looked to have been protected as they were almost unhurt despite some debris on them. Naruto, what Hisana looked to see Naruto was wide-eyed, looking near them. When she followed his gaze, that was when she saw it. Laying near them was a damaged arm, an arm that appeared feminine and something he had seen when he was on the receiving end of it. Having been damaged from the explosion and sent flying near where they arrived, yet something the blonde took notice of was the fact it was severed by a sword. Slowly, veins started protruding from Naruto's forehead as his hands turned to shake fists. Naruto, you should. Hisana was cut off by her friend who was looking in another direction, focusing on something. I can track them if I move fast enough, even if I can't use flash step. His words caught her off guard, and the two guards appeared on alert and point their weapons at Naruto. You're not going anywhere, Uraki was caught off as Naruto grabbed his weapon, and to the shock of Hisana and the guards, Naruto swung the weapon with the guard still holding it, right into the other guard with such force that it had sent both flying. Naruto, you can't. Began his friend while he was crouching in one direction. It was also noticed by Kain, who saw this scene with his eyes widening, just as a few guards outside took notice of the assault. You don't even have your Zanpakuto. It was left at the gates. It all fell on deaf ears as he moved with speed that, but most to shame, even without flash step, he moved incredibly fast that caught them all off guard. Stop him. One guard shouted as the other two that were knocked down began to stand. The one that was shouting was silenced by Kain. None of you stop him. This caught them off guard to see his serious expression. You have more important things to focus on, so do your job and check the estate for anyone else caught in the blast. His words shocked them, yet did as told reluctantly, yet one guard faced him. He is fleeing the scene. We must. He was silenced by Kain's angered expression. He is not responsible for this. He grabs the guard by his collar while Hisana just watched unmoving. He is trying to find the kidnapper and save my sister. If you want to help, then help the ones here or call for assistance from the 6th Division right now. He shouted at the guard, who looked at him like he's gone mad, yet did as was told and ran past him, while two individuals were at his side, green light protruding from their hands to heal him, with Kain just looking at Hisana, who stood there before he mouthed something. Trust in Naruto. Chapter 5. You're a real piece of work, aren't you? Muttered the man. He stood in a large area that was located in the sewer system. All around that there were different pathways near the end of the walls that encircled that, a meeting point of the tunnels. The man was dressed in all black, wearing a headpiece that covers the bottom part of his face and top, leaving the eyes unsealed, while his clothing was reminiscing of a ninja's due to also wearing a long jikatabi. Before him sat Kaku, who was laying against the wall, her left arm behind her back and restrained with a style of rope that prevented her from using any kitten-based attacks, but her right was gone as her arm up to the elbow was severed and currently was wrapped in tight cloth to prevent blood loss. Around her mouth was also a gag that prevented her from speaking, yet did not stop her from glaring daggers at the man looking down at her before he bends down, grabbing her by the face. I'm in a hurry, so you're going to tell me what I want to know. Where are the secret designs of the Kakaku Tame located? This caused her eyes to widen in shock as he held tightens on her face. We know that you are to be selected as the sole operator of the cannon once the head steps down to have your brother take her place. After he said those words, he removed the gag and got quite the response. Go fuck yourself. She shouted, saliva hitting him in the face. Why the fuck would I? She was cut off as a slap came to her face. Shut your mouth. He proceeds to grab her by the face, pressing her head into the wall, while the other grabs her bandaged arm tightly, causing her to jolt. I can make things very painful for you. He proceeds to press his finger into the wrap on the fresh wound as he could see her try to shout as the pain grew. If this won't work, I can just use the tools I have to torture you, and lying won't work on me, so don't even try. He digs deeper and she started to struggle, the blood leaking from the wrappings, and a tear starts to form. At that point he saw her eyes widen, but not towards him. Something behind him, which he turns just as a kick slammed into his side that sent him skidding back with a look of clear shock on his face as he draws his blade on high alert from being snuck, being yet froze at what he saw. What? He was staring at the oddly dressed man kneeling next to Kaku, yet his gaze never leaving his sight. Judging by his clothes, he doesn't appear to be a part of the Gate 13. The man slowly stands up just as Naruto did the same, the two looking at each other. But even so, I hid my presence and made sure to hide hers, yet he was still able to track me down here. He points his blade at Naruto, who enters a fighting stance, yet at that point, the assassin noticed he wasn't armed before realizing he was the kid he saw exiting the Shiba residence, which visitors could not be armed once entering the noble district, even for the Gate 13 members. Why are you here, you fucking idiot? Kaku began, the tears having already been wiped away by her, and just looking at Naruto like he lost his damn mind, yet he just glances at her while smiling at her. Well, sorry, you damn banshee. He looks back with a smile, dying. Didn't exactly feel like doing nothing when one of my best friend's sister got kidnapped. I can handle myself. Stop lying, it's okay. This got an angered look from her until the next part. After all, I could always tell when someone is lying and I heard your brother shouting as I gave chase. He wasn't lying when he trusted me to save you. That got her to shut up, staring at the blonde as he and the assassin moved. Despite the speed he showed, the killer came to an abrupt surprise at how the distance was closed fast, the young man already in front of him. Fast. He swung his blade just as Naruto moved, having the sword miss by inches, yet still cut bits of his head strands, while he gave a jab that the assassin dodged and barely missed. The assassin swung the blade diagonally yet was dodged by the blonde, dealing a sweep kick that had him lose his balance as he started to fall, yet he still swung again the moment Naruto tried to reach out, having him gain distance immediately, with his eyes going to his left hand that he extended, seeing a cut on the palm. I can't act careless, I need to be faster with my strikes. His hand turns back to a fist and prepared himself, while the assassin gets ready as well after getting back up. The two moved simultaneously, both closing the distance as they began a close combat match with Kaku just watching with wide eyes. Second year my ass, Kaku muttered as she watched a small cut being made on Naruto's cheek, yet he didn't even react as he was able to land a jab that took the assassin by surprise, more so the fact he was pushed back from the weight of the strike. His reaction saying it all from the side of his wide eyes. A second year isn't this good, I haven't seen this since Uruchi. The second slash on Naruto's shoulder landed its mark, gaining a grunt as he swung only for the foe to gain distance once again. TCH. The blonde frowns at his opponent who was busy staring at him before a sigh escapes his lips right before he entered a stance and pulled his blade back. You're just a kid, he mutters before he was gone, something Naruto didn't expect, while Kaku went wide-eyed at the very sight he couldn't react when he appeared at his side, the blade slicing across his back much to his own pain, yet he didn't let that stop him as he turned yet he was gone. The foolish one, indeed. When he turned, he had come to an adroit stop as the blade was brought down across his abdomen deeply. You really couldn't see through Shunpo, meaning you must be some newbie graduate. As he spoke those words, blood just gushed out from his open wounds before a second slash followed suit. Idiot. She screamed as the blonde fell backward with wide eyes, hitting the floor as more blood had begun leaking from his body while his gaze was on the ceiling. I didn't see him. The assassin merely plants his foot on Naruto's chest, gaining a grunt as blood drenched his clothing. Pathetic. He gave one kick that sent him a few feet away, rolling once he hit the ground. You may possess skill hand to hand, but that was all it was. The assassin's back turned to him as he lay on his back, feeling excruciating pain from the slashes. While this was happening, the assassin just approached Kaku, who was glaring at the man. It appears he was all they sent, so I should move you again to a more private area to begin the questioning. As he spoke those words he was sheathing the blade and taking out another gag. It was during this time, Naruto was staring at the ceiling as he felt his strength disappearing. Shit, after all this, I'm gonna die like this is just shitty. As he thought those words, his gaze moves from the ceiling to Kaku, who was scared despite the brave expression she showed. But the skill you possess, you can accomplish great things. As the words came to mind, his body twitched as he closed his eyes, recalling the captain. You're the first person to ever acknowledge me ever since I could remember. It felt like it would have been better if I had just disappeared, like I don't belong in this world, like I'm some infection that needs to be erased. Yet as he opened his eyes again, a new change was taking place as the pupils appeared slit. And with time and patience, you can master that talent you were born with to use it in more productive ways. Talent, huh. The assassin turns while Kaku's eyes widen to see Naruto now rolled on his stomach, slowly trying to get up, yet blood merely leaked from his fresh wound as he tried to accomplish the simple task of getting up, the sight just shaking the noble, unlike the assassin who looked disgusted and turned away towards Kaku as he spoke, giving the noble a gleeful smile that put fear in her. It's useless, the wound you were dealt was fatal. Whatever strength you have left will soon fade. His voice slowly died as he heard a new sound and turned to find Naruto already on his feet yet wobbly. But he was staring at him, yet noticed the fact the wound he made was almost closed. How did you know how to perform Kaden? Yet you didn't chant. He stopped speaking to frown as he drew his sword while Naruto was looking at his feet, taking deep breaths while in his mind the look on Kaku's face replayed in his mind. What could I say or do to put her at ease? Tell her I'm fine, tell her there's nothing to worry about. No, none of that would cut it, and she wouldn't buy that. His eyes widened as an idea came to mind, something that caused a smile to grace his bloodied lips. You can barely stand, you have willpower, I give you that, but he stopped talking the moment Naruto looked up, and it just silenced the assassin completely with his eyes widening, the same with Kaku, despite the situation, despite the damage he received, despite the difference in ability, the man before the two was smiling like there was no tomorrow, a smile that unnerved the assassin while putting Kaku at ease, even if she tried to hide it. Sorry about that. Spoke the blonde, his smile not wavering at all as he wiped the blood from his lips. I'm ready for round 2. His words caused the assassin to rage, yet as he did so, even while smiling, the blonde took a certain captain's words to heart and was calming his mind. I won't let his words be wasted on some rando from the Rukongai. As he thought that, the assassin pointed his sword at Naruto. And I can't lose, no matter what I must win, there is no but. You damn insect. He quickly moved, using Shunpo to disappear from Naruto's sight, but as he did so the blonde felt like time was slowing down, as he was focusing on everything he had, everything he could do was focus on seeing it, and like a switch having been pulled, like a lightning bolt hit him, a memory flashed in his head of himself, Hasana, and Kane laughing. That memory caused him to smile more, which didn't go unnoticed by Kaku, who just sat there and was staring at him, seeing his lips curl more while the assassin got behind him with a raised sword. Kaku was about to shout, yet obvious it wouldn't come out in time, nor would he be able to react, and as her mouth opened slowly, the words didn't come out as she just stared in shock at what happens next, while the assassin himself was met with a rude awakening as the blonde had turned right in his direction in the time he had risen his sword. No words were spoken as the assassin could only stare in shock, freezing up, which became a massive error as a fist came crashing into his face, sending him across the room and into the wall. What? Kaku and the assassin thought in equal shock, the assassin spitting out a little blood as he hit the ground, yet even so it didn't stop him from getting up to see Naruto smiling as he entered a fighting stance. As I said, round 2 starts. His smile just irritated the assassin, who wipes away the blood from his mouth before doing it again and using Shunpo, this time going all out in speed as he was already behind Naruto with his sword pulled back, knowing he couldn't react in time as he gave even less time for Naruto's quick reflexes to allow him to turn, yet instead found a foot slamming into his abdomen, sending him across the room again with such strength he felt his ribs crack as he hit the opposite wall. The scene just had Kaku remain silent, eyes filled with disbelief as her mouth just hung with Naruto looking at her with his smile glued to his face. You should close your mouth unless you want to swallow bugs. This caused her face to heat up as she did as was told, without an argument, while the assassin stood up, glaring at Naruto, who turned his attention to him and suddenly sheathes his sword, something that confused Kaku. You are unharmed, and that foolish attitude, I shall crush it without the need to use my Zanpakuto. He proceeds to enter his fighting stance, yet the sight of it caused Kaku's own eyes to widen as she recognized it. As this was happening, the smile on Naruto's face increases as he gives a bring it on hand motion, which was accepted as the assassin used Shunpo to get in front of Naruto, this time kicking out leaving no delay in movement, yet Naruto barely dodged as the high kick merely rubs against the side of his face. His reflexes are extraordinary, thought the assassin as the two begin close combat, both barely dodging the other's attacks, from kicks, punches, palms, and headbutts, they just avoided the other's strike. We're getting nowhere, thought the blonde, who had an idea come to mind, and that idea was immediately tested. Instead of blocking the next strike the foe dealt, which was a direct thrust of his fingers, he instead took it head on, feeling the pain as the strike dug deep, yet at that moment, the assassin was met with a fist to his face that sent him flying across the room. Gotcha! The blonde shouted as he watched the assassin this time land on his feet, skidding to a stop, and the sight just had Naruto's smile increase. You better not chicken out, let's keep this going. His words infuriated the man who used Shunpo to head towards Naruto. Even if it used more stamina, he was going all around Naruto, who was turning fast, leading to an opening gap at his side, where a foot slammed into him and could feel ribs cracking, and perhaps one breaking, yet instead of pain, the blonde smiled as he grabbed his leg. Wrong choice. That single shout caught the assassin off guard, but found himself in the air from Naruto lifting him by the leg. Before he could spin to break free, he was slammed ruthlessly into the floor, and the process repeated with Kaku just staring. Her head followed the assassin being thrown across the room, into the same wall again that left more cracks. Sliding down it while Naruto just brushed his hair back, his smile still stuck to his face as he stared at the assassin slowly standing up. Instead of anger or hate, he looked puzzled, more so very unnerved. This kid moments ago was on the verge of death, but now he was fighting like that never happened, and more importantly the fact the wound he gave him was fully healed. Who are you? The demand caught Kaku off guard as she watched him enter a fighting stance. I don't recognize you, are you a noble or some special guard assigned to the Shiba clan? His question puzzled the smiling blonde, who put on fake wonder. My aide. His smile turns devious. Or maybe I'm just a second year in the academy that's totally beating your ass into next week. That last part would have angered the man, yet he froze with his eyes almost bulging in disbelief. Second year, he all but shouted in pure and utter shock, which the blonde just laughs before he brushes his hair back again so it wouldn't get in front of his eyes, while the assassin was still processing the information before he got serious and grabbed the hilt of his sword. I thought you wanted to fight me unarmed. I admit it, he fully draws out his Zanpakuto. If I continue to fight you foolishly like I would lose, so I need to end this fast even if I must use it. He points the end of his blade at Naruto. I must complete my mission. Upon those words, his body gave off a purple aura, just as the two felt the air vibrate. Zankaku no Namuri. Just like that, the sword transforms as the blade of the sword becomes a cylinder with the tip forming a small bowl with holes all over it. Back away. Kaku shouted, which gained his attention, a puzzled expression on his face. But then Naruto sidestepped to avoid the weapon by the assassin, who closed the distance with Shunpo before backing away immediately, confusing the blonde until he felt it, his body feeling heavy all of a sudden along with his eyes. What? As he thought that, he started to stumble as he tried to stay awake, which the assassin got close again, and this time his swing dealt damage as it hit his abdomen, which he could feel more ribs cracking as another broke, causing the blonde to grunt in pain, yet even so he still smiled as he stumbled back, a trail of blood coming out of his mouth. It's his Zanpakuto Shikai. Kaku began, gaining his tired gaze. You can't win, especially without his Zanpakuto. Now that he's using his soul leave already, she stopped to see Naruto looking at her before smoking brightly. And do that he was cut off as the assassin closed the distance again and deals a single blow to his temple, the strike drawing blood as he starts to fall, much to her horror at the sight. Now sleep. The assassin turns away only to hear a sudden stomp as a chill ran up his spine before he turns to find a fist inches from his face. What? Once again he was sent across the room like a ragdoll, landing with a roll before he hits the wall, his back against it, as he was now staring at the blonde on his feet. Despite the blood leaking from his temple and the damage he received so far, the effects he was dealt with did not stop him as he was smiling wide awake. Two emotions were gained from the sight, one of shock that soon turned to fear, while the other was sheer amazement. I'll never back down, because I''am. As he shouted those words, his name appeared in his middle, and like a fog being lifted, the last part was uncovered. Naruto Uzumaki. As he screamed that, he pulled back his right arm that formed a fist, with the assassin using Shunpo to get in front of him, swinging full force, but in that instance, he was gone. No thoughts could come to mind, as the assassin just stared at where he disappeared before his gaze turned to the right where Naruto now was standing, as his fist was an inch from his face. There was only darkness as the assassin was knocked into unconsciousness as his body flew across the room once more, but this time he didn't react as he hit the wall hard before meeting the floor. There was only silence that filled the sewer system as all Kaku could do was stare at the dumbass who just risked his life to save her. All he did was take deep breaths before after a few seconds he turns to her with an equally shocked look before it becomes a full-blown smile. Yes, I win. He starts to walk towards him but began to wobble and stops, taking deep breaths again as his eyes looked tired, and just before Kaku could speak, all of a sudden by Shunpo, many Shinigami arrived with their Zanpakuto drawn. Oh, guess back up. He was silenced as his eyes widened, just as Kaku's did the same when they pointed their blades at him, while others went over to the unconscious man to place him in cuffs. That is enough out of you? One guard began, glaring at Naruto, who was confused, yet Kaku spoke, while two Shinigami were at her side, using healing kid man checking her condition. The hell do you think you're doing? Her demand got some of their attention. He's the one who saved me. If he hadn't, she was cut off by another speaking, someone that caused Naruto to jolt and turn to see the captain of the 6th Division, Ginrei Kichiki, approaching the group from the entrance. The captain looked at Naruto for a few seconds before turning to Kaku. A report was given to us by Kane Shiba. Upon questioning, it was revealed that he requested assistance from Naruto, yet as the rules dictate, because he is not a fully fledged member of the Gate 13, he must not be involved in matters concerning the Gate 13. This caused the blonde's eyes to widen as he looks down at his feet, a look that said it all, yet was not anger, but a sad smile. Unlike Kaku, who looked pissed, the captain just looked over Naruto's wounds before turning to the culprit. Even if he saved you, he still broke the rules and has risked the safety of you, a noble. For that, he must be arrested. Yet even so, that didn't calm Kaku, who shoved her way past the healers and approached the captain, only to be held back by the squad members. Rules my ass. If he hadn't, she was silenced by her name being shouted and turns to see Naruto having his hands bound, looking at her and smiles. It's fine, this is the price I had to pay. With that said, he starts being led away by the squad members, yet Kaku could only grit her teeth in anger at how he was fine with the choice and turns to the captain, yet he spoke before she did. Everything will be looked at closely. Despite him breaking the rules, it is yet determined if his involvement truly saved your life. This caused her eyes to widen. Not to mention, currently, your elder brother Kane Shiba, despite his condition, refuted any wrongdoing Naruto has committed, noting that the 6th Division wouldn't have arrived in time. He is working to have those charges dismissed despite everything that has just happened. He turns away from her. Show patience, you are a proud member of the Shiba clan. With that said, he was approached by Smjun Kichiki, his son and lieutenant, who stood before him while the unmasked assailant was being taken away. Captain, we uncovered the identity of the assailant, and it matches the testimony of Division 2's 3rd seat of the Detention Unit Corps, Kisuke Urahara. This caused his captain's eyes to widen as he looks past him at Naruto's back while he was led away. Despite being a second year, he defeated a 5th seat officer of the 2nd Division without the use of his Zanpakuto. As he thought that, he turns back to Kaku. Let us take our leave, we can question you once we've arrived at the 4th division for more treatment. With that said, she reluctantly followed, her mind on how Naruto was just fine with being taken away. Idiot, she mutters while the captain and lieutenant glanced at her as she followed. Chapter 6. Whistle. The lone blonde sat in his cell, all but whistling to pass the time while his arms bound behind his back. Number 2. Thought the troublemaker. Wonder what's happening, those asshole guards wouldn't tell me anything and threatened to hit me if I didn't stop asking them. As he thought that, he suddenly leans forward to stand right up and stretches, gaining a few cracks. I wonder if I remove these and put them back on before they get back, will they? He stops and turns fast upon hearing footsteps before he immediately sat back down on his ass. It has been some time since we first met in the Rukongai, Naruto. Spoke the captain of the 6th division, Ginrei Kichiki, who had stopped in front of the blonde cell. I've come here to inform you of the decision made on your actions. He was cut off by Naruto. How is Kaku, will they be able to restore her arm? This question caused his eyes to widen slightly before he regained his composure. She has received medical attention in 4th division, but unfortunately they could not restore her arm. The news had an effect on the young man, who looks down deeply troubled, which the oldest one watches his reaction closely. I see. So what happens to me? As he asked that, he showed not a hint of fear for the unknown. To start things off, his toque grew serious with his gaze causing Naruto to shrink. What you did was indeed very foolish, you unknowingly decided to run after a kidnapped noble, completely disregarding your place in the entire incident. His words caused the blonde to look down at the floor. Even if Kane Shiba permitted you, it was not his to give. As the law states, this was not your duty to be involved in, and you brazenly ran into danger against an opponent you knew nothing of was foolish. Your overconfidence in your abilities jeopardized the safety of a noble. What you don't realize is that it could have ended far worse than losing an arm. As he finished speaking, he stared at the blonde, who finally spoke while looking up to meet his eyes, yet all he got was resolve. Even so, I don't regret what I did. His words caught the captain off guard, yet he frowns. Even if I were to be punished, I won't regret making the choice to save her. I never thought once of being overconfident in my abilities, all I thought was I had to save her. If I hadn't done anything and just stood there, I would have always regretted it. As he finished saying that, the captain just stared at him with clear surprise. Through his eyes, he could see a close image of another he once knew years ago, but that image of the second person all but disappeared upon speaking. I'm sorry if my answer disappoints you, but that's how I truly feel, even if it means I must be punished for breaking the laws. With that response given, there was only silence, with captain simply sighing. You are still young and inexperienced, with time you will grow to understand, so I suggest you use this incident and learn from it. When he said that, Naruto's eyes widen all the way. Wait, that sounds like I'm being released. He stops upon hearing footsteps from somewhere to the right of Ginrei, where he could not see. Because you are. As he heard those words, walking out into the open next to the captain was a woman wearing the same garbs as Ginrei, including the captain's white haori, yet what got his attention wasn't the clothing, and he took in her appearance. She was a woman of average height. Yet what got his attention more than anything was her dark purple hair and her golden eyes, and with it, the blonde felt his heart nearly skip a beat. This was the day where I met her. I am Yuruchi Shimin, head of the Shimin clan and captain of the 2nd division. She merely smiles at the blonde. You were originally going to be punished, yet several factors came into play. She glances at Ginrei, who nods before proceeding to take his leave, which Naruto followed after him before turning to her. Since this involved a noble of the 5 houses and took place in the aristocrat district, it would be handled by said district, with 2 captains acting as mediators. I was selected along with Ginrei because we are the heads of 2 of the 5 noble houses. You see, during talks that included the head of the Shiba clan, Kaku decided to barge in, and almost immediately, Naruto showed an expression that said it all. And caused quite the scene, talking on your behalf, yet even so she was making a lot of jabs toward you. She smiled a little more as he looked like he didn't want to hear any more. It took time to escort her out, but she was adamant you were not guilty and shouldn't be charged. It was at that point a frown forms on her face. An unlikely ally came into the picture, and that was Takanade Tsuneshiro. He had a frown that matches her own. He revealed the fact the guards that had been stationed around at the time of the incident were all being paid by a member of another smaller noble house. They were to give chase to keep up appearances and say they lost her and the kidnapper. That caused Naruto's eyes to widen. It didn't take long to check the information he gave us to find out it was all true. Meaning if you hadn't done what you did, Kaku would have died. As she finished speaking, Naruto just looks down as he was confused why that creepy man would help, but puts that thought aside for how. As of right now, the noble house responsible is being dealt with as we speak, as it's an act against one of the 5 noble houses. With that, there were still talks of your being reprimanded, but she shows a smile and looks to where Ginrei had walked off to. They were instantly squashed by Sir Ginrei. This got a look of surprise from the blonde. He spoke up, he agreed you should be reprimanded for your actions, and letting you off easy would give rise to the same brash decision you made, along with giving rise to others making the same choice, yet it is also with that decision that a noble was saved and punishing the one who saved said noble would, in turn, affect them negatively, but even so, you still broke the law. At that point, she was enjoying the dumbfounded look on Naruto's face. You can see the conundrum that Ginrei left the nobles in after he spoke. A decision on you receiving punishment couldn't be met, and the same goes for a reward for what you did in saving her. With that it was decided Ginrei will speak to you on your actions before being released later today. I see. At that point, Yoruichi turns away. Before I leave, I'll say this not as the captain or head of Shimon's, but as a friend of Kaku's. With that said, she looks back with a smile. Thank you. As he heard those words, he watched her leave before he just plops on the ground with a smile that grew wide at being thanked. I'm sorry, I will never regret my decision. While he spoke to himself, Yoruichi was smiling to herself as she walked with Ginrei. What are your thoughts? Ginrei glances at Yoruichi who was smiling to herself. When I first heard about his test scores, I was interested, but to hear that he defeated a seated officer from my division, she met his gaze. Honestly, it's been years yet he's managed to surprise me twice in a row. Her response merely got the older man to nod. It was sundown when he was making his way out of the 6th Division barracks where he was held for some time, yet only came to a stop due to finding Kane, Hisana, and Kaku waiting for him. Almost immediately his gaze was on Kaku's missing arm and frowns which didn't go unnoticed as the one-armed noble approached Naruto, who just stood there before she came to a stop in front of him with their eyes meeting. Slowly, she raised a hand into a fist that proceeded to give his chest a light punch before sticking to it. Wipe that look off your face, it's irritating. That got a look of surprise from him as he watched her look away with great annoyance. I mean really, lost an arm so what, not like it's gonna do much to hinder me. As she spoke, Hisana and Kane were surprised as they watched them speak. Besides. She looks back at him, the irritation gone but a serious look. After everything you've done for me, a complete stranger at that. You should act nothing but proud of yourself, after all, I'm standing here because of you. She gives him a smile that caused his eyes to widen. Thank you. With that said she turns away. Got to say what I wanted to say so I'm heading home and whiskers, I swear to Riem if you start making one-armed puns, I'm going to kick your ass worse than that assassin did. This caused Hisana and Kane to sweat drop before they looked at the scene weirdly for what happened next, and that was Naruto walking beside her as he spoke. Now, last I checked I kicked that assassin's ass while you needed a hand in that situation. As he said that, a tick mark formed on Kaku's forehead while Hisana and Kane give Naruto a blank stare, as if saying too soon. Oh, you want to die already? Not gonna happen, beating me is a two-hand job. At that point, Kane and Hisana were sweating as they watched the two argue yet unlike last time, it looked like they were enjoying the bickering, both smiling as they insulted the other. Word is already spreading, and fast. Kane mutters while crossing his arms with Hisana glancing at him. Not only through the other divisions but the nobles as well. A second year in the academy defeating a 5th seed of the 2nd division through just hand combat and saving a noble from one of the 5 great houses. It's bound to cause a massive stir at something like this never been seen, plus it will uncover his test scores. Upon hearing that, Hisana puts on a sad smile. They'll want him to graduate early by the end of this week, everyone will hear about Naruto. Her words got a nod from Kane. Wonder what he'll say about being given the chance to graduate early. This got a shake of the head from Hisana. He won't accept graduating early. Hisana began, his eyes on her when she showed a sad smile. Because he doesn't care about that at all, that's just who he is. This got Kane to smile as the two watched Naruto running away from the angry Kaku with a clear smile on his face. Ah, a crush This caused her eyes to widen as she turns and waves her hands. And no, nothing like that at all. She immediately denies it before turning to look at the man running in circles, yet Kaku still wouldn't fall off. It's more like an older brother. After she said that, her expression turned sad with Kane staring at her. You sure everything is alright with you? This got her to turn in surprise. You've been looking more sad lately, anything you want to tell us or me in case you don't want to tell Naruto? This merely caused her to look away sadly. Yo. This got their attention to see Naruto walking toward them while Kaku was walking away, 2 guards at her side as they escorted her back. What I miss? Kane looks at Hisana who smiles while her friend puts the question away for later, the 3 now side by side as they made their way back. Gonna be real lonely without you at the academy now. Mutters Naruto all of a sudden, gaining their attention to see the passive look on his face. Won't guarantee that I won't get into any fights while you're gone. This got Hisana to sigh at now gaining a new responsibility while Kane smiles. It's just gonna, but even so it's not like we won't still see each other, we'll still hang out. Hearing that, Naruto just smiles at his response. I know. It's just, wish things could stay like this always. He looks at the sky to see the sun was setting. After all, you and Hisana were my first friends. Kain just looked surprised along with Asana, the two turning to look at Naruto, who had a sort of sad smile before all of a sudden, Kain wrapped an arm around Naruto's neck. With the games, we're more than just friends. His words seemed to puzzle him as he watched the graduate smile brightly. We're basically brothers, more so now than ever after what you did for my family. Kain smiles cheerfully at the surprised Naruto. Thank you for saving my sister. As he heard those words, Naruto looks down at his feet as he felt something bubbling up while Kain looks past him at Asana. Asana agrees, after all, she even told me she also sees you as an older brother. It was those words that caused him to turn towards her to see the embarrassment on her face. I said that, but why did you have to tell him while I'm right here? As she said that, Naruto just stared at her. But it's completely true. As she finished saying that, before they had noticed, droplets were falling from his face, and they appeared shocked upon seeing it. Naruto, what's wrong? Are you okay? It's true. Before anything could be said, an arm wraps around both of their necks as Naruto pulled them in, his smile appearing on his face to show utter happiness, while the tears fell. You know, I really love you guys, Dadabeo. As he shouted those words, this got the other two to smile. We know. As they replied simultaneously, the blonde laughed happily and tearfully. We're always gonna be together, as the trio. He declared to all in earshot, causing Kain to laugh at Naruto's words with enjoyment, while Hasana just smiles. If only that were the case. If only I was there for them. Chapter 7, 5 years later, and with this, marks the end of the commencement speech and your final day at this academy. Spoke Genshin Kiba, the third seed of the first division and head of the academy. He stood on a podium, in front of the audience of now 6 years who are graduating, all of them sitting in rows of seats quietly and patiently. Many students of this academy have changed over the years attending it, lots weren't the same and had big dreams for themselves, while others didn't care either way. Remember, you all will have meetings scheduled at different intervals today, so be on time and do not be late. As well as, tomorrow you will all be given tours by your selected divisions, any late arrivals will need to wait until a different date. With this, you are all dismissed. But that said, one by one the students stood up as they gathered whatever belongings they brought with them and headed towards the exit, which included Isane Katetsu, having acquired good marks Caden-wise, with a 4th division spot most likely to be given to her. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll be joining the 5th division. Really? For me, it's most likely the 11th. As many talked and walked past Isane, just appeared deep in thought on many anxiety-inducing problems she may face once a part of the Gate 13. Isane. The moment she heard her name, she almost jolted from her thoughts and turned to see someone approaching her, which was one certain blonde. Wait up, got some time to chat. But that question hanging in the air, she fully turns to the one approaching her, revealing the blonde who's changed over the last 5 years, such as the fact he grew his hair out, having a bang over the right side of his head. Not only that, other changes could be noticed if stared at closely, such as compared to when he started the academy he now had slits to his pupils, having gotten them after the Shiba incident. It was after that day I saved Kaku that everything changed, Germ, and the other assholes stopped bothering me. Now that I think about it, they acted more fearful of me, but I didn't care, though I started seeing more whispers from others, oddly it's more so just the girls now. The two walked side by side, talking as they made their way into the courtyards where many others were talking. Where's Hasana? She's heading towards her meeting with the division she picked, so we'll be meeting up later. What about you? It's later today, but it's just a meeting with someone selected by the division to interview us, not some captain or lieutenant, so no big deal. A sigh escapes her lips, gaining more of his attention. You never worry about anything, so free-spirited. She said, yet Naruto just smiled brightly. We finally got along, thanks to the fact when the 4th division and 12th division discovered I had some kinda healing ability, they wanted to study me to understand how it's possible, and since knowing Isane was a fan of Unohana, invited her to come along though, I never found out why exactly everyone is scared shitless of Unohana. Through the corner of his eyes, he noticed several girls once again gathered nearby, watching him and whispering amongst themselves. The sight merely got the blonde to look away disinterested. Guessing they're still bad-mouthing behind my back, but I'm not surprised. Muttered the graduate, yet Isane just looked at the girls in question to see they were smiling and appearing flustered. After all, really started happening after that whole kidnapping. The moment the blonde in question said that, Isane just smiled yet was exasperated. I wouldn't say that. What do they mean? That question caused Isane to go wide-eyed and she almost felt like facepalming, yet just bowed her head. To put it simply, they're infatuated with you. This caused the blonde to stop and turn to Isane with wide eyes filled with shock. What, they think I'm attractive or something? He tilts his head. I don't see it, what exactly makes me attractive? That question took Isane by surprise, yet her expression turned to disbelief, yet instead of answering, another would soon enough. Ice ears. With that shout, Naruto just stood there as someone's body slammed into his back, getting an oof as the person held onto him, getting a piggyback ride on the blonde. "Really, Mashiro?" he asked his fellow graduate, Mashiro Kuna, who smiled with a salute. "Was that necessary?" "Yup." She wraps her legs around his waist and uses his head as a headrest. "It's fun playing around you, you're so solid I could run at you full speed and all you have to do is flex to act like a brick wall." Soon after that incident, started getting approached by all kinds of people that were interested in what happened or just how I was doing. Not sure why they all of a sudden were interested in me, after all, it was just some incident and I'm from the Rukongai. "Anyways," he began, moving on from the subject as he folded his arms. "Isane told me those girls over there are interested in me, was about to ask her, but since you're here, I'll ask you if you knew what made me attractive." That question confused the girl who thought this was a joke. "You're joking, Whiskers, right?" She tilts her head with a confused look and looks at Isane, who shrugs while shaking her head. "Let's see, 1. You beat a seated officer with just your fists, even against his Shikai is an unheard of feat." Mashiro began, raising her hand to count. "True, but number 2, you're jacked." With that, she all of a sudden lifts his shirt up, showing off his abs much to Isane's embarrassment as she turns away with a red face, just like the enjoyment of the girls watching the scene, becoming rowdy. "It's uncommon for someone to be that built, I heard your physique is abnormal for how well it is," she said before raising a third finger. 3. You're pretty handsome, and growing your hair out like that makes you look even more good looking. That got a surprised look from him. "Really? All I did was try to give myself a haircut and got stopped halfway through when I realized it was a terrible idea." This got a shake from Mashiro, who starts poking him in the cheeks. "Nope, by standards you're pretty high up. The moment you beat that assassin, everyone started looking at you differently," she said in a tone of indifference. "What, you into me?" That question got her to put on a thinking pose before she raised her hand and shook it. "Meh, I'm more into the serious and quick to anger types which I can get a rise out of." That just got Naruto and Isane to stare at her questionably. "Hey, it's my type." She tightly wraps her arms around Naruto's neck, resting her chin on his head. "So what's your type, Whiskers?" This got a surprised look from Naruto, who put on a thinking pose as he mulled over the question. The question in general gained Isane's notice as she was interested in it as well, yet the blonde just stood there. That was until a flash of a memory came to mind. "Someone who can make my heart skip a beat." At that point, his eyes widen in realization, while Mashiro just smiles devilishly and starts poking him in the cheeks again. "Ooh, oh, is it we Whiskers? It was just a simple meeting, nothing to take note of. Yet you still remember your heart skipping a beat." That's because he immediately shuts his mouth and looks away, sweating while Mashiro was smiling even more. "I want all the deeds." "No, besides it was years ago. Come on." She starts to pout. "We can talk over ramen and sake, it will be fun, plus it was years ago so it shouldn't matter." Yet he just shakes his head, not even slightly interested, which she pouts even more and starts bopping him in the head, yet he appears unaffected. It was at this point they saw Hisana approaching. "What did I miss?" Trying to find out Naruto's type. At that point, her eyes widen and smiles at Hisana. "You've known Naruto for years, know what his type is?" This confused the girl, who looked at Naruto, giving her that stare that told her to simply silence herself, yet she just smiled. "I recall something about his heart skipping a beat. Hisana, if you say anything at all, I will embarrass you the first chance I get in your new division." This threat merely got a look of horror from his friend, which Mashiro just pouted and looked at Isane. "I didn't hear you yet, Isane, what's your type?" That question got her to look at the three that stared at her, yet slowly she started to blush and avoid their gazes, especially Mashiro's, who just smiled and proceeded to go get off Naruto to hound Isane, who started running. "Why are you running?" "Mashiro, you know why." As this was happening, Naruto was smiling at the scene while Hisana just sighed as she stood next to Naruto before looking at him to see he was smiling with a peaceful look on his face, finding nothing but enjoyment from this scene. "You're still thinking of the captain of the 2nd division." This got his eyes widened before his cheeks started turning red as he looked away. "It was just a single meeting, Mashiro was hounding us about our love life." This got a laugh from Hisana while they started walking side by side. "Did you know there was betting between several girls involving your love life, and a number of them thought you were a player?" This got the blonde to turn to her like she was out of her mind for even saying that, but saw she was smiling. "You joking, aren't you?" "I'm actually not. Some of them thought you were in a relationship with Isane and Mashiro. Heck, they even included me before I shut them down immediately." This merely got a raised eyebrow before he puts on a thinking pose until he was hit in the side with an elbow by the smiling Hisana, who got a laugh from Naruto. "Welp, I should head to the meeting. Almost my turn." With that said, he turns to Hisana. "You heading home?" "Yeah, I gotta start packing." It was at this point his eyes widened in realization. "Oh yeah, what division are you joining?" This question shrouded Hisana, yet she smiled. "The 6th. She told the shocked blonde. The same division as Captain Kichiki. If he asks about you, I'll let him know how you've been doing. With that said, she turns away with a wave and starts walking away, leaving Naruto by himself as he makes his way towards the meeting, but as he does so he was thinking. Joining a division, I wonder what it will be. As he thought that, he was looking forward to perhaps being picked by the same division, as Hisanatho knew he also couldn't be chosen. "Hello," spoke the blonde upon opening the door, being greeted by the sight of a single man sitting on his knees atop a cushion. He was in the middle of drinking a cup of tea before he placed it back down, while Naruto took in the appearance of the blonde-haired man. "Hello, you can take a seat in front of me." As instructed, Naruto did as told as he sat on the cushion in front of the man. "I'm Kisuke Urahara, I'm the 3rd seat of the 2nd Division and Corps Commander of the detention unit." He showed a smile to his fellow blonde. "I take it you must be Naruto Uzumaki." "Yes sir." With that said, their chat began. Next day, at the gates inside the Sarate, "Shit," spoke the blonde, he stood in front of one of the 4 gates that lead into and out of the Sarate, yet no one was gathered but simple patrols passing by. "Am I really that late?" As he muttered that, he now wore his Shinigami uniform with his Zanpakuto at his side, and oddly his sword sheath was a bright orange color. "This isn't good, I'm most likely gonna get crap for missing it." As he muttered that, he looked depressed and wanted to slam his face into a wall. "Damn it, Nuo." He starts scratching his head non-stop with a look of worry and fear, knowing he most likely will be called a slacker for missing the tour in the new division. "Well, isn't this quite interesting?" The voice came from behind, yet somewhat familiar, but also the odd sensation of keeping his eye on the person. "Did you miss the tour?" When he hears that, Naruto stops and turns with a look of surprise on his face. "Aren't you?" As he spoke, standing behind him was Samsuke-san, lieutenant of the 5th Division, who had a gentle smile while approaching Naruto, holding a few documents in hand. 4 eyes. Ever slowly, the normally passive lieutenant's eye had twitched just a little. "I said that out loud, didn't I?" "You did." Chapter 8. Last time. Next day, at the gates inside the Sarate, "Shit," spoke the blonde, he stood in front of one of the 4 gates that led into and out of the Sarate, yet no one was gathered but simple patrols passing by. "Am I that late?" As he muttered that, he now wore his Shinigami uniform with his Zanpakuto at his side, and oddly his sword sheath was a bright orange color. "This isn't good, I'm most likely gonna get crap for missing it." As he muttered that, he looked depressed and wanted to slam his face into a wall. "Damn it, Nuo." He starts scratching his head non-stop with a look of worry and fear, knowing he most likely will be called a slacker for missing the tour in the new division. "Well, isn't this quite interesting?" The voice came from behind, yet somewhat familiar, but also the odd sensation of keeping his eye on the person. "Did you miss the tour?" When he hears that, the blonde stops and turns with a look of surprise on his face. "Aren't you?" As he spoke, standing behind him was Samsuke-san, lieutenant of the 5th Division, who had a gentle smile while approaching Naruto, holding a few documents in hand. 4 eyes. Ever slowly, the normally passive lieutenant's eye had twitched just a little. "I said that out loud, didn't I?" "You did." Current. Thanks again for showing me around, but is it really fine?" "And it is, simply missing a tour isn't all bad, after all, I recall hearing you've been to a few divisions so far." He responds, glancing back at the blonde who scratches the back of his head with a smile. "Yeah, 4th Division and 12th Division." When he heard the second part, the lieutenant looked back at him fully. 12th, why would they need to see you exactly?" "Something about me having a sort of healing ability, it was discovered when I was fighting that traitor." That got a look of surprise from the older one while they walked past Shinigami on duty. "Really now, that's indeed interesting. Have you been told how that is happening?" A shake of the head was all he got as the blonde raised his shoulders and hands. "Nope, they're still looking into it, so I'm stuck with weekly visits to the 12th Division." As soon as he said that, he came to a sudden stop that gained Aizen's attention and he looked ahead, also stopping. "Damn it, Hiyori, why did you have to kick me in the face again?" "Because you were asking for it." Before the two, standing at the center of the pathway they were on, were one captain of the 5th Division, Shinji Hirako, who was arguing with a short blonde lieutenant of Squad 12. "What's happening?" "Ignore them." Aizen went to move on to another pathway till the captain took notice of them, holding the shorter one back. "Hey, are you really just gonna walk away when your captain is being assaulted?" demanded the man who got Aizen to stop in his tracks. "Help me out with this short demon." "What did you call me?" Her demand was followed by a kick to the groin, causing him to fall to his knees while clutching his family jewels. "Yoi damn mop," she was silenced as her entire body was lifted by the back of her kimono. "What the hell? That's enough now, Hiyori." The one to have stopped the fight was the very captain of the 12th Division, Kiryu Hikifune, who gave the younger one a stern look that got her to stop struggling. It was at this point Aizen was helping his captain stand up. How unbecoming for a captain to get kicked in the privates by a lieutenant. At this point, the man glared at Aizen. "Hey, why are you shaming me when you could have helped me restrain her?" Again sir, it's unbecoming for a captain to not prevent oneself from getting kicked in the privates. As he slightly corrected himself, the captain just smoldered while Hikifune let Hiyori down. Hello again Uzumaki, Hikifune said with a smile and wave. What brings you here? When he heard that, he did a small bow just as Hiyori noticed him. Hello again, Captain Hikifune. He was cut off by Hiyori, suddenly making a dash for Naruto and kicking him in the jewels, gaining only silence till the girl clutched her leg in pain with Hikifune just sighing at her lieutenant basic adopted daughter. You have balls of steel. So you just kick people in the nuts now? This got a growl as she went to punch Naruto only for him to outstretch a hand to stop her, keeping her from getting close as he had a grip on her head. Let go of me you big oaf and fight me. She demands. I want a rematch. He just watched her petty swings with Hikifune watching with a bead of sweat while Shinji was trying hard not to laugh and Aizen just watched in silence. Slowly, he showed a devious smile and raised a hand up to his height. You gotta be this tall to fight me. This immediately caused Shinji to turn away, trying his hardest as damn not to laugh, while Hiyori had a large vein protruding from her forehead, slowly her hand inching towards her sword till she got a bop on the head from Hikifune, who proceeded to lift Hiyori by her uniform. That's enough Hiyori. But captain, no buts, you remember what happened last time you tried to attack Naruto the moment you two got into an argument. This got the girl to cross her arms in great annoyance while she was being hanged till she found herself thrown over her captain's shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Wait, let me down captain. No can do, you'll just attack them again. She turns towards Naruto, Aizen, and Shinji. I'll be leaving with her now, I'm sorry if she's caused you any injuries, Captain Shinji. But that said, she starts walking away with Hiyori who is struggling, yet it is evident it was useless with the three just watching. Is she her mother? Asked the blonde who got their attention with Shinji speaking up while crossing his arms. No, but for how she treats Hiyori, I can see why you think that. She practically acts like a mother figure to her ever since she joined her squad. The captain turns away, cracking his neck before turning back towards them. That being said, why are you two traveling together? When they heard that, Aizen spoke up. This is Naruto Uzumaki captain, Aizen turns to the blonde. He had missed his tour upon joining the Gate 13, and since it was my off day I decided to show him around. This explanation causes Shinji's eyes to narrow for a split second, yet return to normal as she looks at Naruto. Uzumaki you say, aren't you that fella that gave that squad 2 members a beat down? This had surprised him, scratching the back of his head. Yeah, that was me. His words caused the captain to smile. Hey don't look awkward, you did a good thing even if it's frowned on by others. That being said he looks back at Aizen. It's not like you to volunteer to do something like this Masuke. In response, a nod was given from his lieutenant. I merely found him panicking while on a walk and since it was my off day, I decided to offer him a tour. Despite it sounding believable, Shinji didn't appear to buy it, yet that thought was immediately thrown out the window when the blonde they spoke of suddenly wrapped an arm around Aizen's neck, much to their surprise at the sudden action. You're not the only one, he scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Four Eyes took me by surprise as well when he offered to give me a tour, thought he had some alternative motive or I said it again, didn't I? His smile starts to falter just like Aizen's, his gentle smile twitching while being held by the blonde whose arm was wrapped around his neck, quite tightly more so why the blonde was acting overly familiar with him as this was their second meeting. However, none of that mattered to the captain who suddenly burst out laughing, pointing at the two of them, and all they did was stare at Shinji in confusion. Ha 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 ha, Four Eyes he fell on his ass, still pointing at them, while a few Shinigami stopped and watched the scene unfold. This is hilarious, hell even I can see that nickname has you reacting to it. When that last part left his mouth, Aizen's eyes widened a little in surprise at what his captain had said just before he was let go, turning to Naruto who showed him an apologetic smile. Sorry, Aizen. He starts to scratch the back of his head again. I only knew you by that nickname till now, sorry if I end up calling you that again, I'll try my best. It's fine, at least you have acknowledged it. The lieutenant turns to his captain and gives a small bow which Naruto did the same. I shall take my leave now captain, I shall give a report tomorrow. Sure. With that said, the two took their leave but as they did so Shinji just watched their backs as they were talking and slowly a frown formed on his face. It wasn't a joke, I honestly didn't even notice his presence till I saw him. It's like unless you actually see him, he doesn't exist thought the captain, yet a smile forms on his face. This was the first time I saw his facade crack and show his actual expression, seems that blonde can get even Masuke to react. Having checked the 13th, 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th and 5th, their next destination was the 3rd division which they were on their way towards and while they did so, they were having a conversation. Isn't having strength like that a sort of gift? Ift. It's more like some kinda trade-off, I suck at kidm, backidm, hadm, and kadm. I can't even perform the spell because it just falls apart. Complained the blonde with Aizen placing a hand on his chin. Very odd, it may be tied towards your healing ability. This idea got the blonde to cross his arms and mull over it. Nah, I don't see it. I think I just suck at. He stopped, just now realizing just like Aizen as they felt droplets hit them and look up, dark clouds have already long past formed. Wait, it's gonna rain today. Yes, but not for long. I suggest we stop at the 4th division, which is close by, for cover. Even if you've been there, I doubt you've been given a full tour. Aizen told the blonde, who nodded with a smile. Sure. And that's why we're here. Spoke the blonde. He and Aizen stood before Yasachika Amura, the current co-3rd seed of the 4th division, next to another Shinigami and leader of the 1st relief team. The man just stares at Naruto before turning to Aizen, who nods, behind them at the rain coming down. I see, well right now it's quite busy. We have a couple of captains that have stopped by along with a stealth force. He was cut off by another behind him. Ah, Uzumaki, I didn't expect you to come back again, since your visit is until Saturday. When Yasachika turned, he saw Retsu Anohana approaching with her usual smile. Oh captain, are you sure? Yes, it is fine. She looks at the two of them. Oh, you're Samsuke-san, the lieutenant of the 5th division. I didn't expect to see you here as well. I am giving him a tour of the Soul Society, Captain Anohana. He said with a slight bow. It is my off day and he missed his chance at the tour. This had surprised her before they heard a small laugh, and behind her two others approached, both wearing Captain Haori's. Was the only sound that left Naruto's lips as he stared at both, stopping behind Anohana, who smiled and turned halfway. You haven't met them yet, they're fellow captains. This got a nod from the straw-hat-wearing man. I'm Shunsui Kamraku, captain of the 8th division, and the one next to me is Shurm Yukitake, captain of the 13th division. The other captain gave him a gentle smile. It is good finally meeting you. I've heard quite a lot about you from Akei and Shiba. This got a smile from Naruto, who scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Really, what did he say? Well, I wouldn't say it was all good things. This got the blonde to freeze as he started sweating, yet Shunsui just gave a small laugh at the reaction. I heard quite a lot about you from other sources, protecting a noble with nothing but your bare fists. I would stay and chat, but my lieutenant is expecting me and rather not keep her waiting of all people. Shunsui said before they moved out of the way, with the captain sliding the door open before turning to Aizen and then Naruto, giving both a nod. Thank you Anohana, for the medicine. Shurm said as he turned and gave the two a nod, but as he walked past them in the rain that was already letting up, he was puzzled for a second while the door closed behind him, turning around to stare at the door. Something wrong? Shunsui asked his friend, who seemed to have a lost look. I don't know, for some reason I feel very anxious and on edge. With that said, the two continued on their way, yet even so Shunsui was focused on what he said, finding his words to not be expected. Back inside, Anohana was showing Naruto around with Aizen following, but as they did so, the glasses-wearing man watched Naruto's back in curiosity while he was staring at some medical equipment. As I continue to study him, more questions mount. His gentle smile plastered to his face as he looked outside, the rain about having stopped. I can't recall the last time someone disrupted my guys. His thoughts came to an abrupt end when he noticed someone watching them from the corner of his eye and turned his head in curiosity, which Anohana took notice of, her smile slightly increasing. Aizen, have you completed your task? When she asked that, the taller one suddenly jolted when the three were looking at her while other Shinigami passed by, ignoring the usual quiet, shy, and observant girl who immediately showed herself fully. Why yes captain, I healed the injury she had sustained. She told her captain, who nodded while Naruto smiled cheerfully. Oh hey Aizen, didn't see you hiding there. Raised a hand as if waving. So did you get away from Mishiro when she tried prying you about that question? This caused Aizen's face to heat up and her body to freeze while her captain watched, her gaze showing nothing but interest while Aizen raised an eyebrow. Question you say? The captain turns to the blonde. May I ask what that may be? What our type was? Responded the blonde, as if involving a random in the conversation was a normal thing to do, which Aizen and Anohana understood Aizen's reaction. It was a question he was abruptly silenced by Aizen, having already got behind him to cover his mouth. Naruto, they don't need to know that. She immediately told the blonde, glancing back at her captain, who was staring at her with her usual smile, but her gaze told another story. I don't know about that Aizen, it sounds like an interesting conversation to be a part of. At that point, the taller one was shaking in embarrassment, unlike the blonde who just smiled till he noticed someone exiting the room Aizen was just in. She was dressed in ninja garb, she was relatively petite, having gray eyes and short black hair, while scratches and cuts were seen on her face and clothing. The moment she laid her eyes on Naruto, they immediately narrowed, which he took notice of. Hello. Spoke the whispered one, yet the girl didn't seem all too happy and approached the group, and she turned her attention towards Anohana, giving an bow then one to Aizen. Thank you, I'll be on my way. With that said, she abruptly walked past them, yet as she did so, anger formed on her face while she was passing by Naruto, which didn't go unnoticed by Aizen, who watched her leave the building in a hurry. Do you know her by chance? Aizen asked, his attention on the blonde who just shrugged while he was glancing at the door. Don't know. He turns his attention away from it. Though it's obvious she doesn't seem to like me. It was after this that Unohana spoke while turning away from them. I must be on my way now, I have several more tasks to finish today, so I hope the tour was enough. This surprised Aizen, yet she froze when her captain gave her a side glance. Thank you, Captain Unohana. Aizen said as he gave a small bow while the blonde once again smiled brightly. Yeah, much appreciated. He stops to immediately bow as well upon noticing Aizen, the sight amusing Unohana who turns away. Let's get going, Aizen, I need your help with a few things. Why yes, ma'am. The two watched as they leave to go back to business, leading Naruto and Aizen to show themselves out the door, but as they do so, the two find none other than the same girl that had walked out just standing out the door, her gaze fixated on Naruto. Yes. Spoke the newbie who was tilting his head, unlike Aizen who watched in interest before she suddenly pointed at Naruto. I am Sui FNG, a member of the executive militia of the Onmitsukidan, and I request to have a spar with you, Naruto Uzumaki. She abruptly said, more so sounded demanding, with Naruto just staring at her before at Aizen who was just as surprised. What? Chapter 9. Last time, the two watched as they leave to go back to business, leading Naruto and Aizen to show themselves out the door, but as they do so, the two find none other than the same girl that had walked out just standing out the door, her gaze fixated on Naruto. Yes. Spoke the newbie who was tilting his head, unlike Aizen who watched in interest before she suddenly pointed at Naruto. I am Sui FNG, a member of the executive militia of the Onmitsukidan, and I request to have a spar with you, Naruto Uzumaki. She abruptly said, more so sounded demanding, with Naruto just staring at her before at Aizen who was just as surprised. What? Current executive what of the what? Was the confused reply he gave Sui FNG, causing her eye to twitch in response. It's one of the 3 branches of the military in Soul Society. Explained Aizen, gaining Naruto's attention. It's generally seen as attached to the 2nd division, as someone who's going to be joining I suggest you look into it. Hearing that, Naruto only made an O sound before scratching the back of his head sheepishly, turning to Sui FNG still staring at him with her unbroken gaze. Wait, why do you want to spar with me? As he asked that, the girl frowned at Naruto before she spoke. It doesn't matter the reasons, will you accept it? As she asked him again, Naruto tilts his head before he shrugs and smiles. Sure. But that stated, the two followed her to a training ground used for sparring within the Sirte, taking the shape of a large square platform that Sui FNG stands upon, stretching, with Naruto turning to Aizen. You don't need to stay if you don't want to. Yet the man simply shakes his head, still smiling. It's fine, I'm quite interested in this spar you will have. His answer surprised Naruto before he heard Uzumaki and turned to see she was entering a fighting stance, which Naruto just smiled. I'm ready. Upon hearing that, her eyes narrowed in annoyance, which Aizen took notice of, yet stood on the sidelines and watched her dash right for the surprised blonde. He barely dodged a punch before a leg slammed into his side, getting a grunt as Sui FNG jumped back, creating distance. Ow. Mutters the blonde who touched his side. You know it's he immediately shuts his mouth the moment she is gone, only for a strike to hit him in the back of the head, turning to look at Sui FNG, gaining distance as he scratches the back of his head. Are you using Shunpo? As he asks that, he notices she is glaring at him, confusing the blonde who looks at Aizen for answers, yet the man simply shrugs before he turns to Sui FNG. Do you have a problem with that's serious? Her sudden demand took him by surprise. Bring up your guard and take this seriously, if I were an enemy you would already be dead from your openings. She said, causing the blonde to start to sweat. Well, this is just a friendly. He was cut off as she once again dashed for him, proceeding to unleash an incredible combo on the unexpected blondie. This is serious. She jumps in the air and delivers a swift kick to his face that causes him to take a step back just as she lands and goes to deliver a strike to his stomach, but her eyes widen at finding a hand reaching out, barely touching the wrist he was trying to grab. She immediately used Shunpo to create distance between them. The blonde just stands up, staring at Sui FNG and appearing unbothered from the attacks he already received. You know, we just met, but I feel like you hate me. He scratches his cheek. Did I do something in particular? His words angered Sui FNG, and she used Shunpo again to get on his side as she threw a punch, shouting to take this seriously, but her words were cut off as Naruto just caught her hand by the wrist. I can't apologize if I don't know why. She used his hold against him as she grabbed his arm with her other hand and lifted her whole body, going for a kick to the face, but he twisted his arm she held onto, which caused her to miss landing a kick, much to Sui FNG's surprise, before she goes to deliver a kick to his abdomen, but her leg was then grabbed by Naruto's other hand, leading him to look up as her other leg was in full speed with her foot heading for his face, but he unexpectedly headbutts her leg, causing her to grunt in pain, yet becomes high on alert as Naruto's hand suddenly lets go to immediately get in her face and snap his fingers, immediately alerting the girl as she jumps back to create distance. As this scene played out, Aizen watched with surprise, headbutting a kick of all things before seeing Naruto entering a fighting stance with Sui FNG, regaining her composure as she does her own, yet her eyes widened when Naruto started smiling, the sight of which Aizen recalls was a nickname, the Smiling Fox. "Be ready." Immediately she used Shunpo to get on his side, yet found a kick slamming into her, barely able to react from the force it brought with it as she found herself in the air, but her eyes widened to see he was gone. Just as her feet hit the free ground she felt a chill as Char saw fingers enter her peripheral vision, leading her to turn fast, where she found fingers in her face and snapping, causing her to jolt as her legs were swept with her back hitting the ground, but she rolls back with a surprised look on her face. "You still want to continue?" She grits her teeth and gets back up, entering a stance again, while Aizen simply remains silent, watching the fight between the two of them. With a shout she charges straight for Naruto, and unlike her anger and serious expression, Naruto remains smiling throughout the spar. "So, why are they angry? Shut up already." She begins landing strikes on Naruto suddenly, the sight surprising Aizen who watched the sudden change. "I will not lose." Sui FNG shouts as she delivers a barrage against Naruto, who brought his arms up to block as she proceeds to deliver a kick to his temple, causing him to step back before he goes for a kick. She dodges by ducking and proceeding to swipe his feet that caused him to fall on his ass as Sui FNG raises her leg to perform an axe kick on his head, feigning an ow as she proceeds to do a spin kick across his face, causing him to fall back as Sui FNG gets on top of him and starts to punch him repeatedly in the face before grabbing him by the scruff of his clothing and forcing him up a little while she pulls back a fist until she felt a hand grab her wrist. "That's enough, Sui FNG." Hearing that all too familiar voice she turned, seeing her captain and mentor, having stopped her in her tracks. Lady Uruchi as she repeated those words, the one under her was very much surprised as Sui FNG at seeing her, watching as she pulled her off of him. "What were you trying to accomplish?" She crosses her arms, causing Sui FNG to look down. This only got her to look down at her feet, which Uruchi sighed. "It's about the test scores, isn't it?" This got her to remain silent, yet her embarrassed expression said it all as Uruchi scratched the back of her head. "Sui FNG, I told you I didn't care if someone got better scores than me, you shouldn't have acted on something like that." I'm sorry, Lady Uruchi." She fell to her knees and bowed her head apologetically while Naruto sat up. "The only reason I even interfered was because you stopped trying." When Sui FNG heard that, her eyes widened as she turned back to Naruto. "You noticed? You got slower all of a sudden and you didn't look tired, plus guys stopped smiling." As Uruchi said it, a smile returned to her face. "I see even after the span of meeting a few years ago, you still do reckless stupid shit." This got a surprised look from Naruto, and for the first time, he didn't smile, the sight causing Aizen's eyes to widen a little as he simply looked away, a faint blush forming on his face which Aizen understood. "Well, that's my gimmick." This got a small chuckle from Uruchi who grabbed Sui FNG by the back of her clothing. "You're gonna be making up for what you did when we get back, understood?" She stares at a moment of her division who simply nods. "I understand, Lady Uruchi." With that, she turns her attention to Aizen. "I'll leave the rest to you, Lieutenant." Her words simply gained a nod from the man. "I understand, Captain Shihuan." With that, she nods and turns to Sui FNG. "Let's be on our way, Sui FNG." "Yes ma'am." She turns back to Naruto who starts getting back up. At the 2nd Division first thing in the morning, introductions will begin there for new members, so don't be late. Her words gained a nod. "Understood, Captain." His words gained a smile from her as she started walking away with Sui FNG, who looked back at him one last time, her expression showing shame before following after Uruchi. "That was quite interesting," Aizen said, approaching Naruto who sighed. "I wouldn't say that," he mumbles as he stretches his neck gaining a few cracks. "You appeared unbothered, didn't those strikes hurt?" "At first, but I don't feel them, just discomfort," was all he said as he stretched gaining a few more cracks before they heard a shout. "Naruto." This got him to turn at seeing Kain and Hisana having arrived on the scene, both in their respective uniforms. "Where were you? We were waiting for you." This gets his eyes to widen and looks at the sky, seeing it's about to be sundown before turning to them as they approach and scratches the back of his head sheepishly. "Oops, sorry I was tied up." "Does this have anything to do with why you looked like you got in a fight?" Hisana asked, pointing out the fact he looked roughed up, but he just laughed. "It's nothing, though now that you're here." He stopped talking as they heard a loud growl, gaining a sigh from Kain and Hisana at the sound of Naruto's stomach. "Never change." "Whoops." Kain looks at Aizen and raises an eyebrow, his gaze trained on Aizen, as he recalled Naruto's words once involving him reminding Naruto of a certain noble. "So why are you here, Lieutenant Aizen?" Before he could answer, Naruto spoke up. "He helped me out when I missed a tour, so he offered and has been helping me." This got a surprised look from the two. "Thank you for your help, he probably woke up late," Hisana said, causing Naruto to look at her with hurt yet didn't deny it as a possibility and just turned away, pouting. It's fine, though if you are going to get something to eat may I join, it's my treat. This got both Kain and Hasana to go wide-eyed. You don't have. I don't think that's. Both were cut off as Naruto wrapped an arm around Aizen's neck. Really thank man, I appreciate it. He said, smiling happily while Aizen just pushed her glasses up. You can let go. Sorry. He lets go as Aizen stands up straight yet notices the pained expressions on their faces. It's fine, I don't mind paying. Was all Aizen said, leading the way to a ramen shop as Naruto happily followed while the other two looked at each other. 1 hour later, for the first time, Aizen sat with a flabbergasted experience. Kain had 1 bowl of ramen, Hasana had 1 bowl of ramen, Aizen had 1 bowl of ramen, Naruto had 19 bowls of ramen, and still counting. The man just watched in shock how he happily slurped down the noodles like a goddamn kumtatsu. He just turns to Hasana and Kain, bowing to Aizen apologetically before he turns to the blonde still happily eating, slowly his eye twitches. What if Naruto is Demon Captain of Squad 2? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.